She'll teach you to give a fuck when it ain't your turn to give a fuck.
You're listening to Walking the Wire, a podcast examining David Simon's groundbreaking series, one episode at a time, with an affectionately critical eye. This show's intended audience has watched the series in its entirety at least once, so consider this your spoiler warning. I'm BZ Douglas, an independent journalist covering police abuse, prosecutorial misconduct, and political corruption in Cleveland and Ohio at large.
And I'm Philip Fairbanks. I wrote the book Pedogate Primer, The Politics of Pedophilia, and am currently working on a book about Kai the Hitchhiker's wrongful conviction. Every episode, BZ and I will be joined by authors, activists, journalists, ex-dealers, and maybe even an ex-cop or two. Each guest brings authentic and enlightening experiences relating to the world of The Wire. Thanks for listening, and come connect with us at walkingthewirepod.com.
Starting line. The first fully produced episode of Walking the Wire is here. It has been a relatively smooth and fun process, save last night when we had our first recording fail trying to get this intro down. So at least we've practiced it, right, Phil?
Well, like I was saying yesterday, I think it's fitting because in the first episode of the show, they're still figuring out what to do. Heck, it's episode 3 or 4 where they can't figure out how to get a cabinet in a door, right? Or which direction the cabinet's even supposed to go. So I think it's kind of fitting that we're, like episode 1, they're still in the old world, and that's us here. We're still figuring out this world of the Wire podcast, just like the characters in the show. So there's some kind of a poetic irony there.
Yeah, and the thought process behind this show, if you listen to our first episode 0, which was just like kind of a straightforward interview to get to know us, but the thought process was just, oh, you like The Wire? I do too. Let's do a podcast about every episode. And it wasn't until last night when we recorded the intro that was not to be. Was when I realized that we've got a solid 2.5-3 years ahead of us, which is not to say I ain't looking forward to this, because we've got 4 episodes in the can and they're great, and I can't wait to get to the rest of them.
Yeah, I'll never forget telling my nurse friend when I started doing the numbers, and I'm like, 60 hours is about how long the series is. So if you have to watch it 3 times, that's 120. Each show is around 2. That's 300 hours. That is 12.5 days if we didn't sleep for 2 weeks. But then, of course, my nurse friend, she's a travel nurse, constantly on the road when she's not dealing with sick and dying people. And she's like, oh, you poor baby. You're having to watch your favorite TV show multiple times? Okay. I'm not complaining. I'm just ruminating on how it is a lot more massive, I think, than we realized at first. But this is going to be fun.
It is, and I think you kind of set us up for the first Patreon pitch, which is to say that there is a lot of work that goes into the show. We do love it. I've really been enjoying producing it, and especially you guys got to hear the very first of what will hopefully be many covers of Way Down in the Hole. This one was performed by my wife, Deb Zep, and together we play as Beezy Deezy. So I'm doing the guitar, she's doing the singing. I've got some locals that were doing bass and drums, and you can find them in the credits. And that's something I'm excited for. Like every episode, I want to find different people to cover the songs, have our guests, if they know an artist that would like to cover it. And the Patreon too, beyond like, hey, it'd be nice for us to make some money for this labor of love. But really, I'm into making the community happen. we'll have a
Mhm.
Discord. We want to have live streams chatting with the audience every week. And we've already had people, we've been kind of talking this up a little bit on Twitter, and some people have popped in to listen to us do some post-show discussions.
Hey, it's not bad to have a couple of folks show in a post-show podcast after show for a podcast that hasn't like aired yet. That's not bad,
right?
man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty excited that we've already got some people that are like tweeting out like they can't wait for this to drop, and I hope we don't disappoint. And one of them actually is going to be coming on board with us to be like our Baltimore lore expert, and that's something I'm really, if with all the time that goes into just walking the wire, the core premise of this show, if we do reach whatever metrics we need to, or we can start putting out bonus content. I'm excited to go into, we can do a lot of the Simon verse out there, Homicide, the new series, We Own This City, Generation Kill, which would be a great one to bring today's first guest, Mustache Bob, on as an Afghan war veteran. And so, yeah, there's a lot we're excited to do. And speaking of Mustache Bob, I'm really thrilled to get into this episode and play it for you all. And I can't tell you how much, if you're listening to this, I really appreciate your ear holes, and we promise not to waste your time.
I like it. I think that worked out well, actually.
Oh, okay. I guess I fell into the closing line without realizing it. That's cool.
Yeah, no, like I was like, that's it. I don't have anything to add there. If you have more, that's fine. But no, I think that was perfect.
Our very first guest is a friend of mine that I know from the online world, from the YouTubes and the Twitters, and he's definitely got a fascinating background to bring to this discussion. So, Mustache Bob, you want to introduce yourself and let us know who you are?
Hi, everybody. I'm Mustache Bob. I'm the host of the Mustache Mafia podcast. I mostly do online content creation almost as a hobby. I cover a lot of philosophy, literature, and politics on my YouTube channel, which I'm sure BZ will link because he's a nice guy. I came to this because this is a really interesting show. I love art, and this show is probably the beginning of prestige television in the United States, especially in the last 20 or so years. So it's really interesting to go back to the very beginning of it and see how this piece of art that's basically an institution in our current zeitgeist got started. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah. And we're definitely interested to have people who have been inside different systems, because that's what this show does really well, is sort of talk about how systems trap people. And Bob, you're an Afghan war vet, and you've got some experience all over a lot of systems, don't you?
I do, yeah. I forgot to mention that I am actually like a 9-year veteran of the U.S. military. Came out like a couple of years ago. And I was deep in the belly of the Green Machine on that one. So I hope that my little perspective can add something to this discussion.
Cool. So this is I think my only other experience in doing any content around media critiques, criticisms, deep dives is actually with you, Bob. You invited me on to just go off the rails on Dune, and that was a lot of fun. So
yeah, that was a great time, man. Thank you for that.
Yeah. And so, trying to think about how you format a show like this going in. And, I think every episode we're going to, the first one's obviously a deluge, but we get new characters every episode to talk about. And then there's the actual like plot of the show. And I think going into this, we should just say it's a spoiler-rama. This is assuming you have watched the show in its entirety at least once.
And if you haven't watched the entire show,
definitely going to be getting into that.
Yeah, it's been since 2002. It's been since 2002. Y'all have had 20 years to actually watch the show.
Yeah, and if you want to walk the wire with us and you don't have time to binge all of the seasons, like I said, we're going to release them. You'll have a couple, like 2 weeks to get in every episode. So that said, we want to just dive right into this one. Anyone have anything they want to say up top, or should we run through like the plot synopsis?
Well, I as far as like episode 1 goes, I love that first scene. I mean, it really does set up the entire, like the tone of the show, especially. I mean, it's gruesome, it's graphic, but doesn't linger on the graphic details, but like just enough to get it in your head there. But then it like shifts in tone, and it's kind of like a vaudeville bit. And it's like this urban spin on the classic, it's a crooked game, but it's the only one in town joke, which I think that and the follow the money are like two of the big themes of the entire show. So like right there, that and the fact we also hear mention of a rip and run guy, which is kind of, we haven't been introduced to Omar yet. There's no mention of Omar yet, but it's sort of like, I think there's a lot of foreshadowing and, like as far as tone and everything, that's all the stage is set in that very first scene.
Yeah, what I loved about that scene for me was that it really kind of sets up the dichotomy between the two worlds that this show kind of inhabits. You have like the uptown police world, and then you have the world of like real Baltimore where the people who are being policed live. Because it's so interesting to see McNulty and the witness, who I don't think they ever actually say the guy's name, who witnesses Snot Boogie get killed. But I'll never forget, they shot Snot Boogie, man. Me and a couple of my friends will say that to each other in jest sometimes. But as he's talking to this guy in front of a dead body on a stoop at night, they live in the same city. McNulty and this gentleman, they've both come up in the same city, but they speak a different language. They dress differently. They hold themselves differently. And even though they're both kind of speaking English, they have trouble communicating with each other. Like McNulty doesn't understand that Snot's a neighborhood institution and that it's weird that somebody killed him over money, because they know that he steals all the time. And it's weird. It's horrifying to McNulty that like they let this guy just steal all the time. But it's also it's impossible for the guy who he's speaking to actually understand why McNulty doesn't get it. And it shows you the really stark divide between these
two different worlds. Yeah.
And that scene, I feel like its whole purpose is setting tone, because it gives you it shows you sort of like how it just kind of slowly focuses on little details, and you get that sense of like, this is a show where like characters are going to have a conversation, and it's not going to hold your hand about like, why am I listening to this conversation? What's the point of it? And one thing that I think is really unique about that scene is that in The Wire, at least, it doesn't connect to anything other than like giving us your setting and creating the tone, but we never come back to that moment. It has no resonance in the series at all. And I think that's really unique. And as far as scenes in the show go, there's no just like, let's show people a little slice of life of Baltimore. That's the only time that really happens.
The Snot Boogie story is based on a true story as well. Yeah. Like that's something I'm also recently realizing. In between The Corner and Homicide, A Year on the Killing Streets, and the Anatomy of a Crime Empire, like I saw a story from Newsweek in 2017 where I think it's David Price is his co-writer on this, and he's talking about the guy doesn't realize he's allowed to write fiction now. You're not writing a newspaper; you're allowed to write fiction. You don't have to it doesn't have to be based on a real person or real people. But yeah, Jay Landsman, Omar, Little Melvin, Avon, Nathan, Barksdale, these are real people. That's another thing. You talk about like injecting reality into it. That's why it feels so real. You've got 2 Baltimore Sun reporters, you've got an ex-homicide cop. You know what I mean? This is the writer's room for season 1. Like, yeah, they know. And one of those writers has spent a year like living on, with the folks of the streets of Baltimore, with the homicide detectives. And one of the things I noticed, a lot of the reviews, I'm starting Homicide right now, a lot of the reviews, a lot of what you'll see that makes The Wire great, like that's what makes his writing great, which it's like, Dashiell Hammett or Mickey Spillane, if they went into like, nonfiction, like, you know what I mean? It's beautiful writing too. But yeah, like the way he's able to humanize the victims, the criminals, and the cops, while still, the balance of that nuance is a true type of genius, I believe.
Yeah, and it was so refreshing for me to start this show again, because it's not like a mess. Like so much stuff that we see nowadays is just a CGI mess of just stuff flying at other stuff and blue lasers flying across the screen at each other and all of this just mess. And this scene tells you so much in the first like 4 minutes of the show without any special effects. It's just two actors sitting on a stoop in front of a dead body that we don't see up until the very end of the scene. It is so refreshing to kind of – it's not quite cinema verite, but it's kind of nice to come back to something simple like this. It's almost quaint now.
Yeah, and I would highly recommend
it feels like it could be a stage play, Yeah,
and like
absolutely.
And like, I don't want to be like as a vet guy, but like as a global war on terror vet, all of the media that's made about like the experiences I've had is so overblown and insane that it's like it's really interesting to see that we can still make a story like this.
And it's it was really, really prescient too, because you got to consider it's a show about surveillance, and the pilot was filmed like weeks after 9/11. Like, whoa, you know what I mean? That's kind of talk about finger on the pulse. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for real. It really is, especially as the show goes on. I was thinking that I didn't know it was filmed immediately after 9/11 because later they go to the federal building. I'm sure we'll talk about that. That's really interesting.
I would definitely we'll link it in the description. Phil dug up David Simon's like original series of articles that a lot of this is based on. And if you have seen The Wire, it's a really amazing read to then get you get the insights into where the reality is. And like a lot of these characters, they're composites, Stringer Bell and Barksdale. And I had no idea that Melvin Williams, until I got further into the article, that Melvin Williams is played by, or Melvin Williams plays a character later in the show. He's the deacon in the third season.
Yeah, he's one of the central characters in the original like reporting that parts of The Wire are based on, and it's pulled from corners of this and that. Multiple works that he did. Omar, like I said, Omar's a real character. Donnie Andrews. Bob said cinema verite. I mean, like, but for real though, because it's like almost taking cinema verite like one step further, and it's like, like Proust or something, the same kind of like attention to detail, and it's got to be, the recollection of things past or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And they do such a good job of telling you stories. And I don't mean just in the way that we're watching a television show, so we're watching somebody tell us a story, but the actors and the writers do such a good job of having the characters tell us stories about people that we can picture things that are happening that aren't happening on the screen. Mm-hmm. Like we picture Snot Boogie's whole life in about 4 minutes, which is so effective and so cool that you don't get a lot anymore. I sound like an old man. You don't get that a lot anymore with your kids. And this is a 20-year-old show.
So then we move out of does anyone else have anything else to say on like that first scene before we get into like where the story rolls off, and so the whole thing kicks right off with the trial of D'Angelo Barksdale when he's being tried for shooting someone in the lobby of the towers where he was posted up as like the lieutenant that managed them. And don't we open on a scene
TV screen also,
Yes.
which, again, it's those little things like the extension cord to Wallace's little squat spot. There's these little things that it's like, I don't know. It's, like underscores other themes. Metonymy, I think, is the term in literature, but like there's a lot of really like metonymous stuff where it's like, sort of a conceit or metaphor that's visual or, that carries through, and like, I love that.
Yeah, I forgot to bring that up, that they were consciously like showing like, filming scenes through surveillance footage to put that in your mind constantly.
Yeah, and what I like about it is that unlike a lot of other media, it's so grounded and like dirty. Like even the courtroom that we go into, it's not like an especially nice courtroom. The courthouse hallways aren't especially nice, and that monitor isn't like a high-end monitor even for 2002.
Yeah,
like if you watch like say like another police procedural around the same time, like say Law and Order or like Crossing Jordan. This is like Crossing Jordan days, and the Zoomers listening to this won't get that reference. But like if you watch those old shows or like CSI, they've got like high-end technology that doesn't even exist in the real world, and everything's very clean. This is like very dirty.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the courthouse building definitely had that like 50s school cafeteria vibe.
I can smell the floor cleaner as they're walking through those hallways.
Oh right.
So yeah, and that very first scene though, going for this whole project of like we're gonna rewatch The Wire and just rewatching it with an eye towards like, oh, I'm gonna critique it on top of then now being closer to the work of a journalist than any other time I watched it. The thing that really jumped out at me is that what sets this whole the whole show in motion is the fact that McNulty, the police officer, has this close relationship with the judge because they were tight when he was a DA. And, he goes and has his sidebar with the judge after D'Angelo beats him in court and is explaining to him, well, here's what the drug trade actually is. And that cozy relationship they have is something that we as the viewers are rooting for, and it sets in motion a good thing, going after a drug kingpin. But, in a lot of experiences I've seen, that cozy relationship between a police and a prosecutor, it doesn't work out in people's favor a lot of times.
Yeah, I had that in my notes too, and I think it's really interesting because the first time I watched this show, I was like a teenager who had the free HBO trial, and I'm sure we all watched this very legally on HBO Max. But the first time I watched it, I thought that judge being on the police's side was like a good thing, right? Because that's like the standard thing, like the cops are the good guys, the judge is on the side of the cops because he's also a good guy. But watching this, it's like this dude's like a hanging judge who's just out to sadistically sentence people because he thinks it makes him righteous. And like watching it again, it's just it's so weird to see that like thing I completely missed because I'm sure it's intentional on behalf of the writers that this judge is like this monstrous part of the system. But I totally did not get that the first time I saw it, and I wonder how many people see that as they watch it for the first time. I also really like how Stringer Bell sits apart from the other gangsters as they're intimidating the witness.
Oh yeah,
he's in a suit.
Yeah, because he kind of inhabits a different world. He's the gangster's businessman who wants to be the gangster businessman.
And
Exactly.
I love how that scene is like a good example of like that style of filming where you just don't even, they're not holding your hand through telling you like this person is a big deal and that person's a big deal. It's like there's so many of the capos and lieutenants are in the courtroom, but you don't know their names and their significance doesn't show up till much later. But
they're just faces in the audience for now. Yeah,
and it shows you a lot about D'Angelo's initial character development because he's supposed to be this big tough gangster. But as they're describing the events, he's a guy who just got jumped by some random civilian in an apartment building and took a beating to the point where he had to pull out a gun and shoot him. And you can see it like on his face that he's afraid too. Whereas the other capos and Stringer are either Stringer's completely detached from everything. That's kind of his character all the time. But the other capos are sitting there and they're intimidating somebody. They're not afraid of the system. But D'Angelo is explicitly afraid of the system. So it's starting to show you a little bit about his character that gets developed even in this episode and throughout the rest of the series too.
Yeah,
his and McNulty's arc definitely, like, I think the real like catalyst stuff is going on in that first episode. It's mainly McNulty and D'Angelo who, we're starting to see changes already. We're starting to see that something wasn't right. They're starting to realize that the path I'm on isn't working. We got to shake things up, and that'll set literally everything for the next for the rest of the series. Is pretty much, the dominoes are set right there with McNulty and D.
I think it's also interesting that McNulty sees himself and Stringer as like worthy opponents across a battlefield, but Stringer really doesn't care about McNulty. He's just like, this is another cop, like whatever.
Well, I don't think of you at all, kind of thing. Yeah,
exactly.
What do you think of me? I don't think of you at all.
Especially as he walks out of the courtroom, he's almost like surprised that McNulty is talking to him. He's like, "Who's this white cop talking to me?" Like,
right? Yeah.
Which Idris freaking Elba, of course, he's going to knock that out of the park. I mean, oh my god.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, I'd like to mention, I watched this feature with Charlie Brooker, the Black Mirror guy, and it was, I guess, for a UK audience. And after that, I realized, like, wait a minute, like a couple of those folks were British, like Carcetti and McNulty are from the UK. And now I hear it. Like, I don't know if you guys know Mitchell and Webb, but there's this, British comedy duo, Mitchell and Webb. And there's this bit where they're like talking about putting on an American Southern accent. He's like, wow, hog. And now I hear that over and over again. Whenever McNulty talks, I'm like, you're from the UK. You're not fooling. Like, it was Baltimore. I don't know what a Baltimore accent. I've never been to Baltimore. But I was sure that whatever McNulty's talking, that sounds like that's what a Baltimore accent would be. Now, Philadelphia, I could tell a Philadelphia accent, but no, Baltimore didn't know, but I just assumed, like, McNulty's accent seemed so real. But no, McNulty, Carcetti, and even the guy who plays Lester Freeman apparently has been in the UK long enough that he almost has a British accent when he's on UK TV. Like, it's wild,
Have you ever seen the show? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that was dumb sidebar, but like a really fun prank. If you can do a British accent to pull off on people, pull off your British accent, get people on the hook, get them thinking you can speak, Brit talk, and then be like, "Oh, wait, you want to know what? You want to hear me do an American accent?" Hey, do you guys want to go get some coffee, or I don't know, we can pick up some burger? They'll lose their shit.
Whoa.
See, I would definitely do that, but my best British accent is like pip pip cheerio governor. That's about the best I got.
That is exactly how they talk. Before we lose the first scene in the D'Angelo's trial, one thing I really love is, so they have there's two witnesses in the trial. One comes up, it was D, and the other witness is the one they got to. And I just love the sophistication of how they tampered with that witness. She's like, I called the detective at this time. And she probably actually did. And this gets to like the other thing that, is fascinating about The Wire is like, damn, good on Barksdale and Stringer for finding a criminal defense attorney who actually fights for them.
Is a criminal defense attorney. Also,
that's kind of operative.
Like he's not just a lawyer; he's the consigliere. You know what I mean? Like he literally, like I do dig those scenes though, like where he's like, okay, listen, this is where you're at. This is what's going on. He's just dropping hints, and he's like, and now I don't need to hear what you guys talk about because I'm your lawyer. Like he's not even a stupid lawyer. Like, this is a lawyer who he's probably not breaking the law. Like, there's a million ways to break the law without breaking the law. There's a million ways to bend the law, and a good criminal defense attorney knows those. But like, yeah, you gotta almost give it to this crooked lawyer. He definitely he does his job and he does it well.
I don't know. I'm coming around. Like, you watch this the first time and Levy's just right there, this toady motherfucker you're ready to hate because, it's like, but now I just look at it, I'm like, you're doing your damn job. And I honestly wish there were more people representing criminals trying to actually help them than their own careers.
Right, exactly.
They cast him perfectly too, though, because like you were saying, like he just looks like a toady little henchman.
Yeah. His voice and everything. Yeah.
And he gets that mannerisms down too. But I thought it was interesting too, the witness that they tampered with. Both of the witnesses really didn't dress like the other people in the courtroom. They weren't like professionally dressed, and they didn't feel like comfortable in that setting. And it kind of, again, it shows you like the dichotomy between like the two worlds that we're inhabiting, because McNulty's like in a suit, Stringer's trying to get into McNulty's world, so he's in a suit, but other people are in like early 2000s really cringy, looking back at it, fashion that sometimes I dress like some of these people. And I'm worried about myself, but it shows you how different the two worlds that they inhabit are. And that's like a running theme of this whole show, of course. So we're going to see in a lot of scenes, but I just really love how they tell it subtly.
Yeah,
and we come to this courtroom right after the witness to an eyeball witness to a murder just told McNulty, "I ain't going to no court."
Right.
Yeah, and peppered into this scene too. We have the murder trial, and then the next scene is we are introduced to Kima, Herc, and Carver doing a drug bust. I mean, we can get into that, but I wanted like real quick. I love that they then cut to McNulty going down the hall to tell the officer whose case it is that it's about to shit the bed, and we just get like the anti McNulty in this cop. He's just like, what? I'm haggling with like trying to get planks for my deck, and I don't give a shit. Whatever, just doing the job, and that is not who McNulty is as an officer.
Which we're going to see run up against the system of policing in Baltimore, which is arguably more monstrously portrayed in this series than the actual criminals that they police are.
Right.
Because he's upsetting the apple cart. Because this police guy is really just there to collect his pension and get paid and put in his overtime. And McNulty's upsetting the apple cart by actually being what they call good police in this show.
Right. I've actually got a quote from Homicide that I think kind of sums up that feel. A red ball case can mean 24-hour days and constant reports to the entire chain of command. It can become a special detail, with detectives pulled out of the regular rotation and other cases put on indefinite hold. If the effort results in an arrest, then the detective, his sergeant, and his shift lieutenant can rest easy until the next major case, knowing that their captain's ear will not be gnawed upon by the colonel, who is no longer worried about turning his back on the deputy, who at this very moment is on the phone to City Hall, telling Hisner that all is well in the harbor town. But a red ball case that won't go down creates the opposite momentum, with colonels kicking majors, kicking captains, until a detective and his squad sergeant are covering themselves with office reports explaining why someone the colonel thinks is a suspect was never questioned further about some incoherent statement, or why a tip from this brain-dead informant was discounted, or why the technicians weren't ordered to dust their own assholes for fingerprints. But yeah, like right there, you get the feel of like it's politics all the way down, and it's not electoral politics, it's office politics, it's personal politics, it's chain of command and shit rolling down. Like, what is it? Piss trickles, and shit rolls.
Yeah, that's how these systems work too. Without tooting my own horn too much, like I've been near like the policy level of some pretty decently big systems, and I've seen people putting these directives down, and I've also been at like the lower level of these organizations too. So as they're talking about this, I'm thinking like, yeah, it is sort of electoral politics, because it's somebody who's elected who wants the crime stats to go down, who has power over the police, are telling them, I need these crime stats to go down. And the police are pushing, the colonel will push down the directive to the major, which is really weird to me that the Baltimore police are actually using like military ranks. Because I don't think the NYPD did that where I grew up with with explicit like major and colonel ranks. And when I lived in California, I'm sure they didn't. But it's interesting that they do that because of a line that will come up later. But that gets pushed down to the command level, who pushes it down to the tactical level guys on the street. And that's who we see as we see Carver, Herc, and Kima be introduced to us. Is like the people who actually have to carry out these directives in this drug bust.
Yeah, and
you were talking about. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go on.
Yeah, you're talking about the stats. This is something I think I mentioned in a DM with BZ. We were talking about how, like, as soon as something becomes a benchmark or a metric, then all it is at that point is something to get around to juke your stats. Whether you're a marketer or, a police detective, like stats, benchmarks, metrics, that's just something that you finesse in order to get the numbers right. As soon as you create a benchmark, it has become useless, because there's always going to be a way to, let's make it look like this. That's something else that, I love that you see over and over again. And you've got people who do have experience in homicide, as a detective or working alongside homicide detectives. So, they know what they're talking about here. But yeah, I think that's why you see that over and over again.
When I was like a college freshman, I took a criminal justice course, and one of the books they had us read was this thing called The Mythology of Crime and Criminal Justice. It's like freshman level reading, so probably no one will ever see it in a Barnes and Noble or anything. But what like kind of made me start to get a little bit bitter about the police industrial establishment was that part of that book said that to get the murder stats down in some places, they were noticing that police departments were blaming unsolved murders on serial killers. So that the actual number of active serial killers in America was like massively inflated to what it actually was.
Wow.
Well, now we're
because if it's one serial killer, it's not 15 different guys.
Other work.
Yeah.
You probably know more about that than I do. But like, but like 18-year-old me was like, holy. I don't know what your policy on cursing is. Holy excrement.
No, I think we're doing it. It's a TVMA show, so I think
I mean, if there's any
TVMA for adult themes and language.
If there's any fucking kids watching this, then because you're a huge fan of The Wire, then Jesus fucking Christ, you can handle some swearing if you've already watched the show.
Exactly.
You just have to be fucking careful when you tell a veteran that he can swear. Okay.
All right. But, I think that's why, I read The Anatomy of a Crime Empire, but then when I read Pieces of Homicide, that was when it was like, oh, well, holy shit, let me just say, because part of what makes it better is he's allowed to cuss now, okay? He's allowed to fucking cuss and just he's not writing a newspaper article. Yeah. He's just telling you how it fucking is, okay? And that's what makes Homicide Anatomy of a Crime Empire was great, but dude, it like I said, it reads like classic, Dashiell Hammett or Mickey Spillane, or it's got that feel of noir, it's got that, or James Elroy, whoever from today, but it's got that feel,
If Frank Serpico did a police procedural in the 70s,
right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Which I would have definitely paid my HBO to see that.
So let's see, where were we? Yeah, so Kima, Herc, and Carver show up, and we get sort of our first scene of what would be the closest to what you normally expect to see on cop shows, arrests in the street. Yeah. But even then,
beat down, really and guns drawn, and But
even then, it's really meticulously into the details of what an arrest is, and that's where you really see the difference between the type of cop Kima is and Herc and Carver. It's they're into rushing the car. Get on the ground, they know that training, and then she's sitting there to be you missed the damn gun, and she's the one doing the paperwork later. And
I love that dynamic between the three of them, because Kima is the stone cold professional who's actually very good at her job. Carver is decent at his job, and Herc is just so enthusiastic. he's just so
he's
just
a bull in a
happy to be
china
there.
shop. Yeah.
He's like so pumped that he found this dude's pump shotgun, which I actually wrote down in my notes as shot fun because it is. He like pumps out the shells. He's like, look, guys, found shotgun, yay! You know, I don't know why he's Mickey Mouse in this scenario, but oh boy, found shotgun.
No,
He
I
was
think that's going to be a running motif for the show. Whenever we say a Herc line, that's how he talks.
Yeah, you have to do it as Mickey Mouse. And he pops out the shotgun, and Kima's like, two guns, and finds the other, this big, obvious nickel-plated Beretta. That's like, whoever the prop
Two
master
different
is.
kinds of cops right here. Yeah. Two guns, we see two types of cops. That moment, that's in my notes. I was like, two guns, two styles of cops. Yeah, because she you know, and I think she's in a weird way, she's soulmates with McNulty too.
Yeah.
Because, you know, so of course we see like, you know, Bunk and McNulty's relationship, but there's a different type of relationship between McNulty and Kima. I think they're more alike than Bunk and McNulty. You know, like they both put the job, they're obsessed with the job, you know, and they want to do a good job. They like, you know, solving a case to the detriment of their actual, you know, physical life and relationships and, you know, everything that should really matter to them.
Well, I feel like,
you know, it's kind of
Kima is somewhere between Bunk and McNulty or whatever, and they all kind of share some traits. But yeah, as far as like
it's a
Bunk,
spectrum, I guess.
Bunk's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
good at the job. He's not just a hump. He's not just there for the check, but at the same time, he also is just like, be good at the job and then fucking let this shit end, you know? and McNulty like takes it home with him, and you sort of see Kima as the more like, you know, between the three of them, she's the least wreck of a person in terms of like drinking and dogging, you know, in her
For
off
now,
hours.
anyways,
But
yeah.
the more that they hang out, you see that McNulty's influence on Kima.
I think, McNulty, you're right. It's more like McNulty rubs off on her, maybe even. Yeah, you're right. Which, you know, I didn't think of that. I believe you're onto something there.
Whoever the prop master was in this first scene, though, is brilliant for having the gun that Herc misses be a big, obvious nickel-plated Beretta. Like, it could have just been like a Glock, you know, but he's like, no, let's get the shiniest possible nickel-plated pistol that you can't miss.
It's like, Herc, you love shiny things. How'd you miss?
How did he miss that? You know,
it wasn't jangling.
Yeah, he wasn't moving it. Like, oh my god. And I love that the genesis of this arrest is that a lady is angry that her boyfriend's cheating on her in her car. Mm-hmm. And that her concern isn't that he's getting arrested and going to jail or that her car might be seized. She's like, that shotgun scratched my paint. Like, not like that moron had a 12 gauge illegally in my car. It's like, did it scratch the paint?
Right. You know, and that's not the first time we'll see like just some personal pettiness like actually kicks off to where a crime is solved because somebody was petty. Yeah. Somebody was just plain old petty. You know, it wasn't about like good guys and bad guys. Somebody was petty and they rolled over, they said something or they snitched on somebody because, you know, you screwed me over first.
and it's also another scene where it's not actually connected to our larger plot in the show. It is really just there to introduce them, and this case that's going down with them, we don't see it again.
Yeah, you're right. It is.
Yeah. Same as with the initial scene. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
It kind of shows you too that like for the people getting arrested or for the people dealing with the system, it's like a serious day in their life. But for the police, it's just like, yeah, there was like 5
just
murders today.
Day.
I saw 2 or 3 dead bodies. Oh well, you know. Shrug. I busted some.
Also, you know what you just said, BZ. I think what's going on there. The reason why the first scenes are disconnected. They're still in the old world. You know, they're about to enter a new detail, a new world that is going to change them personally and professionally. But they're still in the old world first. We have to see where they came from before it makes sense that they're going somewhere new. Yeah.
Yeah, and so then. And then we get the same thing too, also with interspersed between these two, or the scenes with Kima, is then we get Bunk on a murder scene with McNulty, and that that great, like exchange where they're, like, why are you answering this call? It wasn't your turn. Why are you giving a fuck?
Yeah. It's not your turn. Yeah. Yeah.
And,
which is like the opening quote too.
Yeah.
That was, and
hoping that it's not a murder, not because that's a bad thing, because then
the
it's
stats,
more work.
It's bad for stats.
It's bad for stats and it's more work. Something that's interesting.
Exactly.
Something that's interesting about Bunk in this scene, and I'm not entirely sure if it was intentional or not. Well, first of all, we discussed this before we started recording, and I just have to get it out there. As a cigar smoker myself, Bunk is one of the few characters across all of media that smokes cigars and isn't evil. And as somebody who's chewing on a Nicaraguan cigar as we're recording this, I'm very, very happy to see my people represented. The other thing about his character in that scene, though, is that he's got that cigar in his mouth in the murder scene, and it's a decomp. And I wonder if it was intentional because people used to smoke tobacco on murder scenes because of the smell. And I wonder if it's part of his character that he can't stand the smell, so he's smoking the cigar. I like to think that it's something that we're learning about Bunk in that scene.
And I would love it if that actually is the reason, and they never tell us that. It's just, I love that stuff where it's like, well, there's a reason he has that cigar, and if you know it, you know it, and if you don't, well, you'll just go through life not knowing that until you listen to this podcast.
You're welcome, kids. don't smoke cigars. There'll be less in the world for me.
So we're so I mean, I love that point that you bring up, that like where we're at like right now in the show, it's like, before your first 10 minutes of the movie where you have your inciting action, in the formulaic screenplay method of the thing that sets everything in motion. And that's what we're leading up to still, but it's crazy how long it even takes to get to that, because the first thing that actually happens after in terms of like the whole case that sets off the first season is when Daniels is debriefing on the Barksdale case. And they're finding out about it because the judge started bringing things up after McNulty's conversation, and watching everyone get so mad about this.
Yeah, because it's like we discussed earlier. These guys are. It's not about actually being like good police. They care about the numbers, and like coming from a military background, a lot of the times like our command. I've had great officers and I've had terrible officers. And great officers actually care about their people and will actually try to develop them as soldiers and as human beings. But I've also had terrible leaders, and those terrible leaders lead through PowerPoint, and they do not care about what's actually going on or how people are actually feeling. They care how the PowerPoint slide looks for the command meeting at the end of the week. Right. And watching this again after I'm sure I watched it in the military, but watching it with a critical eye now, I'm like seeing that. I'm like, that is exactly how my life was governed by people who were in very fancy offices who did not care how miserable it would make me. Like, they don't care that people are working 18-hour days. They don't care that like these people are doing like double overtime. They care about the number that gets reported to their boss, and that's it. And so when something upsets them, which is a judge coming to talk to them, they get furious because the PowerPoint is screwed up, even though they're still using typewriters at this point, which is really quaint to see too.
But I mean, it's also suicidal for look at McNulty. He's, his life is going to get shaken up. And like to a very great degree that he doesn't like. We see once again, talk about foreshadowing, that I know we hear once the bit about the boat, but like then Freeman later on, where do you not want to go? We hear that twice before it happens. But like, even if you're just making it, even if you don't want to climb the career ladder, it could always get worse. And, we have there are different ways of applying pressure on different levels and towards different types of people. Like, you don't have to be, Rhonda or Daniels or Burrell or Rawls, especially Daniels in the first part of the first season, that's a big conflict. He does still want to do good work, I think, but also at the very least doesn't want, to get his ass chewed.
And it's great from like a storytelling perspective, but from like a practical perspective, it is kind of one of my one criticisms of this episode is that you'd think that he would be smart enough not to tell them where he didn't actually want to go.
Right. Yeah. True. Yeah.
Like you'd think he would say like traffic or something. I really don't want to go to patrol.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Well, I think in that moment though, I know what you're saying, but it plays well because it seems like it's just a shooting the shit conversation, and he lets his guard
and it's
down.
kind of fatalistic. Like if
Not
he
thinking
hadn't ended up on that
landsman
boat,
would rat
there'd be
him
no
out.
season. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a fair point.
That too. Yeah. But I mean, like I mentioned, it's got to feel sort of like a stage play at sometimes, like, and then other times it's almost like Shakespearean or Greek tragedy, like with the sense of like sort of a sense of fatalism, especially with like McNulty and D. Like I said, the things that happen in that first season will change them, and gets a ball rolling that rolls downhill like with Sisyphus, and their path is set because of some, like, in some cases, like that offhand remark about a boat, sets everything later in motion because of that. There would be no season 2 if he didn't like the smell and getting seasick,
or even like, in thinking about the fact that like this whole season set in motion, like Barksdale, the detail that takes the Barksdale Empire down. Well, it all started because they beat Dee's case in court. Would this judge have been so incensed to go after Dee if like they got him?
Right.
There's a
yeah.
There's a great line that we kind of missed in the Herc, Kima, and Carver introduction, where they're talking about fighting the war on drugs.
Oh yeah, War's End.
War's End.
Is that in this episode?
That is in this episode.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I highlighted that in my notes because I take notes like a nerd. But that is so prescient because it's 2002. I guess it was filmed in 2001, which I'm just finding out now, which is really interesting. And he's like, War's End, because we're just going to war at this point as a society. And 20 years later, we were still in that same war. So maybe you were wrong there, Carver.
Yeah,
maybe wars don't end, bro.
That's a good point. Yeah. Oh, man.
Ironically, the drug war is kind of coming to an end before the global war on terrorism is coming to an end.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think they kind of dovetailed that way, didn't they?
They did a little bit. But it kind of also shows you that the cops know that they're not going to like eliminate crime. And they're not going to completely like, if they take out Barksdale's crew, they realize that the game goes on and that there's just going to be another crew.
Well, that's in the article from Simon. Is there's he has several agencies, and this is in the 80s at the height of like when they're starting to the drug war is in its full zealous mode, and there were already people saying like we're not doing anything but keeping a lid on this shit.
Yeah. But that's probably one of the best lines in the series right there.
I think I love too in that moment. Carver just says that like it's off the cuff. And then we get that really great little moment from Herc where he's like, I'm going to get a pen. I'm going to write that shit down.
I like to think he's got a lot of Post-it notes just in his life.
I keep myself surrounded by wisdom.
Yeah, that is Herc. Oh, boy. That's a good quote, bud. Let's go fight the war on drugs.
The goal of this podcast is for him to hear this and then beat one of our asses.
Oh, bring it on, bro. I was a Golden Gloves boxer. I'll fight Herc. He might take me, but I'll get to say I fought Herc. And I'll be doing the...
Now, if we did it pay-per-view for charity, I mean, like, then it's for a good cause even, and I would pay to see that, even if it wasn't for charity.
And you know what? I would be doing the Mickey voice the whole time. You never knocked me down, Herc. Oh, boy.
Oh, man. So we're coming up on the introduction of another one of those characters that everyone loves to hate or eventually maybe find some affection for, which is Rawls. And actually, It's interesting in like because I wrote down just like one sentence, like here's every scene that happens, and right before we meet Rawls is when we meet Daniels, and he's talking to Kima because he just learned about the case, and you those two scenes next to each other where you have Daniels talking with Kima, they're on the same level. He's sitting there talking with her. You're my valued officer, you know, tell me what's going on. And he's got some frustrations about what he's dealing with above him, but he's not like bringing the hammer down on Kima. And then you get the scene with Rawls and McNulty.
I've got one of these, one for each until I can nail your Irish ass.
He invites him to the gun show.
Yeah. He's like he's the hammer of the system. Like, he doesn't exist to be a good policeman. He doesn't exist to make people's lives better. He exists to smite that which goes against the system from such a height that you think God takes a shit on you is the idea of this guy's character. And like, at no point in the series, here's a little bit of spoiler alert, does he actually care about solving crimes. Like, he only cares about preserving that system.
No. There is when Kima's shot. We'll get, but that episode's coming down the line.
Right.
Yeah, he steps up and he's like, "Yo, but like, do this or whatever." That is the one time.
Apart from that, like, and that's because an officer was down. I believe that's what caused that shift. But apart from that, I think one of the best like scenes with Rawls that really shows you who he is. It's in season 2 where he's like talking to Daniels, trying to get him to take 14 murders off his hands, and he's like, "Hey, it's a win-win for me." like that's the selling point. Hey, this will be great for my career. You could do this, and he's like, "What the fuck? Are you seriously? You're selling it to me as in this will be great for me? Like, no shit, motherfucker. Yeah, it'll be great for you."
And it's another brilliant bit of casting because that actor looks like such a prick.
Right? Yeah. Just like with Levy, like it's a different type of asshole. But like when you look up that type of asshole in the dictionary, that's who he. Absolutely.
He looks like he has like definite opinions on grilling. If you go over to his house, and he's going to scream at you if you don't cook his hot dog right. You know.
But in his very first scene, though, we see that Rawls is the avatar of the system. Like he's completely internalized. Like, this is the job. You keep the numbers in a good place, and I am going to do a good turn for my boss, and then that I will have in turn a good turn for me, and I will move up. And anyone who's rocking this boat needs to get the fuck off the boat.
But he knows he's never going to be chief, which is something that'll come up later, which is kind of interesting to me. Is that he knows he'll never actually like go all the way to the top, but he'll get his nice little nestled spot in there that he can't be removed from, like a tumor.
Right.
Which kind of is.
Once you get to that point where it doesn't matter what kind of crooked shit you get involved in, you still leave with the same pension because you just stepped down. You weren't fired, like, I kind of like with a tenured professor, it's like a tick on a dog sometimes once you get to a certain level in certain systems. Yeah.
Well, the monstrous thing about people like Rawls and systems like this is that you'll never know who Rawls is. You'll know who the chief is. You know who the chief of detectives is, but you won't know necessarily who Rawls is. Like, you'll know you probably know who like the Secretary of Defense is and like the Joint Chiefs Chairman,
right?
But you don't know who the general in charge of the 3rd Infantry Division is, or you don't know who the general in charge of
the middle management.
Yeah, they can just burrow in there and do like nefarious crap for like decades.
Faceless bureaucrats. Yeah. That reminds me, like, I was going to say something about like something I think we see in the next episode a little bit too. That there's something about like fat, balding, short, old cops and seniority, I believe. I don't know if they shrink with seniority or what, but like I was during one of my stints homeless, this is Adventures in Adverse Possession, which is not only common law, but in Texas and Tennessee, it's in the annotated code. The legal code says, if a place is abandoned, you go in there, you fix it up, you don't leave for 7 years and you own it, right? It helps you if you pay taxes on it too, right? And so I'm sweeping the porch on this like soon to be condemned structure. Apparently, after I left, they were like, "Yeah, this place needs to be condemned." But there for the moment, and I'm talking to him and I'm explaining I give him the title and chapter number of the TCA code about adverse possession, and they just keep bringing a fatter, older, balder, and shorter cop. And I'm realizing, like, oh, no, this is the rank. This is seniority that I'm seeing right here. And then finally they get to the point where they're like, listen, we talked to the DA, crooked DA in town. There's stories there, too. But I won't give away the whole ghost. But, we talked to the DA, and she said that doesn't apply here. Oh, Tennessee Code Annotated doesn't apply in McMinnville. I thought so, but thank you for confirming that fact for me. And then they gave me some money and set me up at a hotel until the homeless shelter had a spot for me. Okay, Finn.
Well, that's brutal, man. I'm sorry.
But I mean, like, yeah, with a bit with Rawls, that's one of the notes I had because, like, it does remind he is that, like, sort of he's not as bad as the couple of bumblers we'll see who sandbag the detail, but he's got that same kind of, like you said, nondescript bureaucrat asshole kind of vibe to him.
And he'll never face consequences for that because no one will ever know who he is unless awesome journalists actually expose that kind of thing.
Right, exactly.
Or if someone underneath him fucks up in a way where it lands on his shoulders and he can't pass the buck.
Which is like his career is to just avoid that. Like his whole life is avoiding that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good.
No. I interrupted you.
Nope, you didn't.
Oh, you want to far about it? I thought it was interesting how the boat's a punishment assignment and the detail is a punishment assignment too. Because whereas the boat is where McNulty doesn't want to go, the detail is actually kind of where he does want to go, but it's still seen as a punishment by the leadership because it's like you're going to go do actual police work and go to this investigation of this drug crew, and McNulty's like, hell yeah, I love doing this kind of stuff. But they view it as a punishment. They're like, oh my God, I would hate to have to actually do all that kind of work, get out of my dress uniform and leave my comfy office where I have my coffee machine. They haven't invented Keurig yet, but I'm sure I have something fancy in my nice little office. But yeah,
sprawled out on the, feet up with a porno mag in hand, that's
because people still bought magazines back then. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's another thing I noticed. Like it is kind of dated in some ways. Like we see all the cameras and surveillance is kind of almost ubiquitous in certain places, but like compared to smartphones, you know what I mean? Like like, I don't think we had any idea at that time, 20 years ago, that like where it would get to the point where we are all literally carrying like GPS, in some cases, in many cases, high definition audio recording equipment that, reports back to companies connected to the, military industrial complex via Silicon Valley so that they can bypass the constitutional protections of, I mean, like it's crazy. 20 years ago, like it was CCTV cameras some places. Yeah. And now we literally just from what I heard, there was once upon a time, spies had to leave the house. There wasn't just a box. Like, please put all your info in here. Can you record yourself some? Just like, some,
If you're curious about that, there's a really cool book called Spy Catcher. It was written by this really bitter guy who used to be in charge of MI5 in Great Britain, who got fired, and then he spilled the beans and implied that his boss was a Russian agent. But he totally spills the beans on their old surveillance techniques.
Oh wow, that's Spy Catcher.
Yeah, I don't know if it's in print. I have a copy of it, but one of the things that they did back in the day, which is I don't want to get too far off a field here, but it was disturbing to me, was that they would use microwaves to shoot a microwave through a guy's window at his telephone, and it would turn the telephone into a transmitting microphone.
Right. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. I've heard of some
Yeah, so
weird
they were
stuff
like
like that.
they were like monitoring communist
Yeah.
meetings by like shooting microwaves in
Oh,
these buildings. I'm like,
gosh.
I bet all of those people have cancer. I bet like
Yeah.
the dudes who were operating it have cancer.
Right. Yeah. The guys running the thing and the guys having it run on them. They're all,
Because this
yeah.
is like like the late 50s, early 60s in Britain when they were like,
Oh
oh,
my God.
take the radiation cure at the weekend to make you feel better. You know? But yeah, it's a great book.
God.
And
It is interesting too, and I'm sorry, I have a bad habit of over talking, so I hope I'm not being a jerk. But in 2002, I was in the Northeast, and we had computers in my like kind of poorly funded middle school at that time. So I think it's kind of interesting that the Baltimore police are talking about getting computers and still using typewriters.
Yeah.
It kind of shows you that
Yeah,
Baltimore,
true.
even at this like nice police building, is still a very poorly funded city. So it was kind of a nice little...
that's something that Simon mentions in I think in Homicide. That was written in the early 90s, but he talks about how like it was one of the most undereducated cities at the time as well. And like I come from like I said, small rural Tennessee town. And well, we had a lot of those same kind of issues, but yeah, I mean, like in the by 95, 96, we had computers. Like, in 96, they built like a little trailer type thing outside in the parking lot where they had like a computer lab, which ended up being like, our 6th grade classroom after. But like, and like I said, this is, literally way out in the boonies, like, as I like to say, there's the middle of fucking nowhere, and then there's the outskirts. Like, if you keep going past the middle of fucking nowhere and you hit the outskirts, that's where I'm from.
Yeah. Well, it's really weird because Baltimore is like, I guess it's technically above the Mason-Dixon line, but it is like right at that border of starting to become like a southern city in this country.
Yeah, like Delaware or whatever. Yeah. I notice you hear a lot of country music off and on.
You do.
Which, yeah.
Well, when you cross the bridge out of town and you're in like really like rural wooded areas of the country.
Right.
Beautiful part of the country, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, and the last thing about like the dating of it really did though hit a sweet spot where we're getting ahead of like down in the episode, like what they wiretapped are the beepers they're using, and I thought it was interesting that was actually what they were doing. Yeah. But it was back in the 80s when beepers were like a contemporary technology. But it's fascinating how well that works to like bring it forward a little bit into the 2000s. Beepers are still around a bit and they can be used. But if this show is just like, you're like 5 years later or something and everyone's got smartphones and be like, would you even be able to get beepers?
It would be a Razor phone 5 years later, to be fair, one of the original Razor phones.
Or the little chirp boost mobile things. I don't know.
Yeah. The spy toy that Herc and Carver get in season 2, that's an app on the latest iPhone.
Exactly. It comes with the CIA suite that you get when you sign up.
So the other thing that's fascinating with looking at the scene list here is like, so we have right one after the other. We have Daniels and Kima, and then we have Rawls and McNulty, and then the next scene we get is Dee's homecoming, where we first meet Avon Barksdale, and so you have this little bow scenes where someone in the middle, captor or whatever, is getting reamed out by someone above them.
Yeah,
I think Avon actually displays like the best leadership out of anybody, and I think that's kind of intentional. Well, it's also practical because the police can screw up like every day and still keep their jobs, but if Avon screws up one time, he's going to jail for like 50 years, and he makes
or end up dead.
But he makes it a point to tell D'Angelo, he's like, I don't know anything about jail, dude. Like, if you want to go to talk to Bill or whatever.
You see Dee's face?
Yeah.
Do you see like that's another one of the, like, I think that's one of, we talk about the inciting incident or whatever, but for Dee's arc, I think that's one of, the really like pivotal moments where it dawns on him that just because I'm the nephew, I'm not protected like that, Like, Avon is my uncle. He's my mother's brother. But we live in different worlds, like we talk about McNulty and the guy in scene 1, and those are different worlds. But even in pretty much the same like class structure, pretty much the same geographical location, it's just a hierarchical difference that makes a huge difference here. Yeah.
Yeah, and it shows how cold Avon is too, because it's really clear in this scene that Avon is just moving his people around like chess pieces. Like these are assets to him. They're not people. They're things to be used. And I like how kind of Stringer's like the chief operations officer. Like he's sitting there kind of with Avon kind of just shaking his head at D'Angelo. And it's kind of really clear here too that D'Angelo is not like cut out to be a gangster, because he doesn't understand where Stringer and Avon are coming from. And they are starting to realize that about him. They're like, "Oh, this kid's your nephew, man," but he's kind of
he becomes increasingly out of the loop too, because I think they're already starting. Like they a theme with D and McNulty. I think they both have kind of a chip on their shoulder and want to prove something to somebody, even if it's only themselves. But that and like a crisis of conscience that they both experience, and like a crisis with who they are and where they are and what they're doing.
When D certainly has to deal with the fact that, and this is I think the big part of his arc in the season is coming to terms with the fact that he didn't choose this. He was born into it and raised into it with his own mother.
Oh, that's why the little soldier line. There's my little soldier.
Yeah, that's a big line for me later on. Yeah, Avon picks up his own nephew. Dee's son is like
born into this. Yeah.
But he's completely not cut out for it, and they're realizing it in this scene. Because I think this is the point at which they decide. This is my headcanon. This is the point at which they decide to take him out of the tower.
Right.
Which we'll see in the next scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, demotion. He's demoted from
instant
the tower
demotion.
Yeah, the one other thing that's notable is that Avon is implying that D shouldn't be carrying a gun because he has people to do that for him. Like, it's kind of a deconstruction of like, if you compare this to like 90s gangster movies, like this is so much better. This is such like a leap forward. We take it for granted now, but like we're coming from a decade in the 90s when we had like New Jack City, which is like a cringy movie to watch now. Or I'm sure I can think of some other ones, but I just can't at the moment, where the gangsters are just like over the top. They're like dodging with like 2 Desert Eagles and firing at everybody. And then in this one, like the head gangster's like, dude, don't carry a gun. You have people that you pay for that. Like, come on.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just brilliant.
And then, so we kind of switches back then to Dee's homecoming in the strip club late at night, and probably I guess it's the exact same time we swing back to McNulty late in the office, typing up his full report to give to Rawls so that he doesn't look like an idiot when he has this meeting in the morning.
Yep.
And there's a really nice scene with Landsman there. I think you called out. I think it's the scene where he says, when you start coming with the customers, it's time to get out of the business.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Right. When you start coming with the customers. Yeah.
Just as Landsman's vulgar way of saying, like, what the hell's wrong with? Why do you care? Why do you give so many fucks?
Like, it's just a job. It's a job. You don't you don't buy into the bull. You sell the bull.
Yeah. I also love how McNulty is such a caveman that as he's typing, he's like, but he's not even like hunting and pecking well. He's just like, he's kind of like, ooh, kid, tiki.
Check.
Oh yeah. He's fully hunched over, like mouth open.
Yeah. Like, I don't think I've ever typed like that. Like in my life.
If 100 McNultys on 100 typewriters typed for 100 years, how long would it take before they wrote Hamlet?
They wouldn't write Hamlet, but they would write that god awful adaptation of Othello that came out in like 2003 called O.
I think they just write a new Pogues album.
Oh God.
I want to
actually
say
like the
I
Pogues.
love the repeated use of the Pogues in that movie.
Yeah.
The Pogues was like that was my mowing music.
Yeah.
Like I'd put on I had my little Walkman or cassette recorder tape around my waist, and just sitting there mowing in the summer, listening to the Pogues. That was fun, I gotta say.
They have a Christmas album. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, it is the best. Like it almost isn't Christmas without the Pogues and alcohol, honestly. They're better together.
They're
both
better
of them.
together. One helps the
Alcohol
other
is
one.
better with the Pogues is better with alcohol. It's together. It's peanut butter and jelly, man.
It makes sense. I mean, you want to, if you're in the same state mentally as the song was created.
Exactly. State-specific learning is something like that. Yeah.
It's research, Mom.
Yeah. So let's see, where were we? Oh, and then right about halfway through is when we get introduced to probably like the heart of the show, is for like one of those characters that's everybody's favorite, Bubbles. And another,
Bubbles
demographic that is treated with a lot of care and respect are the junkies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's the street level view. They're the meat for the meat grinder. They're the expendables. They show you how ugly the game can get. The worm's eye view, people getting beat down, people stealing, people doing what they got to do to survive, homelessness and degradation and desperation. That, we need those characters for that. And, something like I said, I've mentioned, when we were talking about this over and over again, like a junkie snitch, a junkie snitch becoming one of the most redeemable and lovable characters of the whole series. Like that's like I said, there's a certain type of emotional genius that I think, really makes the show work so well.
Yeah, and a lot of like gangster media up until this point, or a crime media at this point, would either like focus on the drug dealer who's like buying expensive cars and doing the Tony Montana standard thing, or they would focus on the brave policeman trying to bring them down, but they don't focus on like the human wreckage that like the opioid crisis is causing now, or that the heroin epidemic caused in Baltimore. And Bubbles is a smart guy. Like he's actually probably one of the smarter characters on this show. As we see in his introduction, he's doing a scam to get basically free heroin, which, I mean, if you got to scam somebody, scam a heroin dealer. That's not advice, kids. Don't do that. Don't follow Bob's advice.
I forgot about the kids who like cussing who are listening. I forgot about that.
But he's scamming drug dealers to get free heroin, and he's teaching another addict how to like kind of survive as an addict. And too often, like we see like addicts or drug users in film and literature portrayed as like either completely like strung out all the time, which if they were, they wouldn't be hustling to get more drugs because they'd be strung out, or like bestial like creatures. Thinking back to New Jack City, like Chris Rock's portrayal of an addict in that movie is like offensively bad, and I'm amazed that he got a career after that. But like Bubbles, it shows you like the humanity of the addict, and that like you can be like a really smart dude and still wind up like shooting heroin in downtown Baltimore.
And this is yet another plot point. They don't realize it, like you said before, Phil, when characters are making these choices throughout the show, like they don't realize it in the moment that they're like, okay, let's do this fake money scam to get a little bit of extra drugs. That, that's going to then lead to Johnny getting busted trying to pull the scam, getting his ass beat within an inch of his life. And that is what prompts Bubbles to...
Not even the first or worst time that he will get his ass beat, of course, but And
then that's what sets off Bubbles to become an avenging CI for the detail. Right. And without him, none of this would have happened. And again, it's just ironic that the Barksdale, crew, like which is everyone endorses this except maybe D. is that like, oh, well, that beatdown had to happen. If we don't beat the shit out of anyone who's trying to rip us off, then it'll all crumble because people think we're weak. And they had no idea. It's like, well, that beatdown actually did crumble your empire in a way you never saw coming.
Exactly. Yeah.
With D in this scene, I thought it was really cool how we juxtaposed McNulty being punished by going onto the detail and having to type, and then immediately afterwards, D is being punished by putting onto a new drug dealing detail, being sent to the pit, which is like in the shadow of the tower that he used to run. So like they're both being punished in similar ways by the organization. I also have in my notes here, as he's walking into the pit, I wrote down, damn, the Nickelodeon couch hit hard times. They have this like ugly orange couch that all the dealers hang out on.
Nickelodeon couch.
Bro, it really, like, remember like the 90s Nickelodeon had like the orange couch. So I'm like, bro, that couch got strung out. That's what happened. Like, hit them hard times, man. But like, and I noticed too that like most of the people in the pit are kids. So like this is kind of like an intro assignment, to drug dealing 101, drug dealer basic training in this pit. And the way they cast this was so brilliant, because like all the people they have walking around the pit look like they kind of belong there. They're either like very poor or very old, and they look like they have nowhere else to go.
A lot of the extras were natives of Baltimore who were from like the projects or whatever. I remember, when I first saw the series, I had started out with, a box set of the DVDs, and there were some like extras and mini documentaries and stuff. And I learned that also, by the way, in the scene with the beatdown, like something that another one of those, like, things that you see like over and over again. There's a juxtaposition of sounds and sights or scenes. You hear kids laughing in the background, kids playing and laughing while the junkies getting the shit kicked out of them. And those kids in a few years might end up in Wallace's spot. They left school, they got it rough. They're trying to make it on their own. They're doing whatever they can to survive, and that includes, trying to work your way up from being the one who yells 5-0 to being the one who handles the money, Also, that scene so poignant where the kid's like, did you mess up the count? Like in his mind, he's like, oh, I know how you get demoted. You messed up the count, huh? No, dude, I shot a man,
Yeah. And God. And they refer to it as customer service, so it is kind of like just like a job working for a big company. It's like you can't serve your customers and collect the money at the same time. He's teaching him how to like avoid the police, but at the same time he sounds like a manager at a Target. It's just
right.
And
but
that is
like,
where we see...
honestly, that's what I've always heard. The term "serve," like that's like any like pot dealer or whatever that I've known. And I know I'm saying pot dealer, so now everybody's wondering, has he ever smoked marijuana? Because he's calling it cannabis, and nobody, But yeah, no, I mean, like any kind of fucking dealer I've ever met. Like most of them have used that same, like, I already served him, or, I got to re-up before I can serve you, but it's kind of funny how, like, it does. It's like, talking about Stringer Bell again, like, how I think I've known some drug dealers who knew more about economics than some economics professors,
I'm sure
like
you have.
I'd like to see some economics professors flip money like some dudes. Like, come on, start the day with $20, end it with $250, and then we'll talk about how much you know about economics. Okay.
And we, in this scene in the pit too, one thing we see from D is like, this is where you see D does have the head for how to do business. He walks right in and sees like, what are you doing? You're taking their money and giving him the, you take the money. He runs around the corner. You do this. But we, what we later learn, and we, starts to, be evident in this episode, D doesn't have the heart, or I guess the lack of heart for the business.
Exactly. A heart is not a commodity in either the policing world or the criminal world, as we see here. It's a liability. Yeah.
Yeah, he can't stand to see the junkie get beaten up, even though he's stolen from him, and that his primary concern at the beginning of the scene is getting back into his tower and doing well at this job. And we
That's
know
not how you move up in the ranks.
and we know already he can't take a beating. That he doesn't have the I don't want to say the fortitude to actually like physically fight. So now we know that he doesn't have the ability to really hand it out that much either. Even though he brags about killing a man to his friends or his associates.
Yeah, that and
kids,
I really I do like that because in that moment you're just watching and you see D be like, I killed a man, and he's holding it up, and it's not until later you realize like, well, he was kind of puffing up in that moment.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Well, he's the new babysitter, you know, like honestly, his new job is a glorified babysitting outfit, right? Like he used to run the towers and now he's a babysitter on the couch watching the middle school and high school age kids like warn 5-0 and handle the money. Like that's, you know, it's a messed up spot to be in. Yeah. So I guess, there for a minute, he wants to make sure they know like, hey, you know, but don't mess with me. You know, I'm the boss here. I'm you know, Avon's nephew. You can't touch me, you know.
It's also something that a lot of guys tend to do in crowds where they know other people are tough or they know other people have been in fights or something, is that they'll try to puff up. And usually that's a sign of somebody who isn't really that tough, because people who are actually, for lack of a better term, hard, they don't have to, because there's like a self confidence with that. Like Stringer throughout this whole series, he almost never like puffs up on anybody. Avon never puffs up on anybody. The other people, Weebay and Bird don't ever actually puff up on anybody. And these are like stone cold killers. But the only one who is actually puffing up are the people who haven't done anything yet, like Bodie and his crew in the pit, or D'Angelo, who knows that he doesn't have it in him. So it's kind of a cool way that they wrote that. Or in the police department, the guys who are like puffing up the most are the higher ups who don't actually hit the street.
Yeah. Well, though in Stringer's case, he doesn't need to puff up, because it's like whenever he's in a scene with anybody, it always feels like he's like leaning
down
in. Like, I just need to stay in frame because I'm so goddamn tall. And he's like curled over whoever he's talking to.
Yeah. He does that really well too. He does that really well in a show called Luther on the BBC as well.
I've heard that's a good one to check out with him.
It's pretty good.
He's
Idris Elba, anything. I want him to be James Bond, and you're probably going to edit this part out, and I don't blame you, but I want him to be James Bond specifically because I want it to piss off white nationalists, and I want the whole movie to not be a spy story. I just want it to be him seducing a series of white women throughout the whole for about 2 hours.
I mean, like, except for the racial factor, that was what Roald Dahl did in the war.
Yeah. That's the secret. He has to seduce a white woman at the end.
I mean, like, you guys are joking, but that's all MI5 did in the 40s and 50s, right?
Yeah.
Like seducing white women. That's all they did. Yeah. So the only difference is the racial factor, because like Roald Dahl, Noel Coward, come on. They had sex. They had sex for the queen, you know.
MI6 got to do that. They're the actual spies. MI5 is their
okay. I'm sorry. You're right.
Yeah,
you're
5
right.
is their version of the FBI, and those guys are nerds.
Yeah. Oh, that sucks. Aw. Imagine being like, you're not a Bobby, you know?
Hey, I'm a Bobby. My name is Bob.
Yeah, but you can carry a real gun.
Yeah,
that's a big difference.
Well, I live in Florida now, man. I can carry a rocket launcher if I want to.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, like, if you're a Bobby and you can't carry a gun and you call yourself a cop, you know, I don't know. That's not a position I would personally want to be put in.
Stop, please.
I've got a stick.
I'll wallop you.
I'll wallop you real good. Well, to be fair, only like 3 people in the UK have guns anyway, so.
Yeah.
You gotta have a license to watch BBC. Of course it's gonna be difficult to have even like a hunting rifle out in the country.
It's funny because as you're saying that, I'm looking up at the top of my desk, and I've got like a stack of empty shells that I have to reload for my rifle. I've got like 100 empty bullets on the top of my desk right now.
We try to run a very American show here.
America. Happiness is a warm 308.
All right, we're okay. Here we go. This is the scene where it's like gets into this is the shit that The Wire does best, which is where we have Daniels and Deputy Burrell have their nice little backroom meeting where Burrell works with Daniels to figure out how are we going to make sure this case doesn't actually go anywhere.
Yeah.
And I remember watching this just being like, I don't get it. Why is it seemed to me like the Burrell wanted to squash the case just because it's like he was annoyed that they had to do a detail, like this was all an inconvenience. And it's not till much later you realize like Burrell is protecting people who politicians who get money from drug dealers.
I wonder if he knew or if it's just radar, like, is it just, he's so clued into the system. He's like, no, that smells like that goes to somebody I've got to kiss their ass later. We're not gonna know. Like he didn't maybe even know, well, Avon's connected to Davis and that connects to, like, I don't know, I do wonder whether he knew or not. Because he definitely seems to hint, like when, the scene with Daniels at the fancy party, and the fact that he makes sure to, that over there is Clay Davis. That's the kind of person you got to kiss his ass if you want to fucking keep your job and or move up, as in not get moved down,
Well, I think he doesn't know because
why him in particular?
from that meeting, like what's he passed down to Daniels? No sprawl, a couple of low-level buy busts, like get in and get out, satisfy this judge, but do not let this get big.
That's a really interesting reading because the way I saw it was that he was pissed that somebody was encroaching on his territory, which is policing. Like this judge had the temerity to tell him how to do his job. So he's like, we're going to do this, do the bare minimum work. And I don't care if I lose on this. I just care if the people who have slighted me lose more than me as I lose too.
I think that's how I interpret it. Like, I think you're meant to, on some level, is think, oh, Burrell just doesn't like encroachment or like this judge not knowing his place or stepping in. Yeah. But on retrospect, like it makes a lot more sense to me that he's proactively trying to make sure that this case doesn't hurt any of the people he's protecting.
Away from
the people who probably made Burrell deputy.
How he got there, yeah.
I actually think that's a better reading than the one that I had. That makes it actually much more interesting. Burrell's like an interesting character too, because he seems always so like at ease and secure in his position.
Right. True. Yeah.
He's just like chilling. He's like, yeah, okay.
He knows how the job is done.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's very subtle differences between Rawls and Burrell, but at first you feel like they're just like one and the same guy. But over time, I got the sense that like Burrell's got more ambition, to go up places, and maybe Rawls does, but he sees it stymied by like, well, I'm a white man in Baltimore, I can only rise so high.
Right.
Because they mentioned that towards the beginning about Daniels, is that like
about Daniels, yeah. Is he Snake? No, but he's got a law degree. Oh well, I mean, Baltimore University, but and he's black, and like they make it clear that he's a hop away from a district command spot, the next one that opens up. Yeah. Which is why I like, when we see the scene where McNulty already knows how to get Avon Barksdale and Stringer. And he comes right out and he tells them, what is it? No mics, no wires, like Daniels at this point is still very much molded by his and his wife's ambitions. So he's basically a pod person. He's radiating the will of the upper level of the chain of command on downwards to an extent. He's doing it in a friendlier, more more personable manner than somebody like Rawls or Landsman, who are much more assholes than Daniels is. But still, it's that same kind of situation, that same dynamic for now. We see why McNulty had to go around his back, because at this point, this Daniels with a foot in the old world, he would have been like, hell no, McNulty, you're nuts. Get back to your work.
Do you notice that Daniels is like the only one wearing like a proper suit, like a suit that fits him? Like McNulty is very casual.
Yeah.
Well, Bunk is well dressed too. Bunk and Daniels.
True.
But in the scenes that Daniels in, he's always like the best and most properly dressed one. Like Rawls is kind of like in an ill-fitting thing that he kind of got off the rack. Burrell's in his dress uniform to remind you exactly who he is. And then like the street cops are mostly kind of mixed casual, except for Bunk, who kind of disproves my point by being a very well put together guy with cigars, and he isn't evil.
And and again, it's just putting the scenes like right next to each other. So we have Daniels and Burrell conspiring to confine the case, keep it small. What's the next scene we have? McNulty strolling into the FBI to meet his buddy and start stoking ways in order to get federal involvement.
He hasn't learned his lesson.
Bigger.
Far from it. Yeah,
I'm here to help. I want to sprawl this bitch. That's what I'm about.
He's kind of like a police Karen. I don't know what that would be. A McNulty.
That's true.
He's going to talk to the manager of the
I'm going to
FBI.
talk to the manager's manager now. Yeah.
That is the unique kind of reads you will get on this show. McNulty as Karen.
Yeah. I mean, you can't tell me I'm wrong. And if you do, I want to speak to your manager.
That was the scene with the FBI though. That had a really one of those marker moments for me where in just a casual conversation, Fitzhugh just mentions like, well, we're closing this down, and then we're done with drugs. It's
changing the guard.
Terrorism now. Mm-hmm. That's the name of the shop.
New war.
It kind of shows you that, like,
like the war on drugs, it's a forever war. Yeah, great.
It also kind of shows you that the feds aren't actually even interested in like doing good police work necessarily. They're interested in prestige cases.
Exactly, and winning them. The feds don't take it to court unless they're going to win it. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and they're also like super well funded and like very secure. Like McNulty's just kind of walking in and out of police offices, but when he walks into the federal building, the woman's like, "You're not going anywhere without an escort, pal." Like, I don't care about that badge. We're the FBI. You're actually not going to screw with us. You're going to go to Gitmo. And then when he goes into this like surveillance bunker that they have in this office building, this windowless room where they have all this like really high end gear, and it's the highest end stuff that we've seen in the show so far. And it's actually like a clean room too, with like clean, well dressed people working in it who are very professional. Like you're like, wow, okay, so this is a whole nother different third world that we're seeing, where like the Baltimore police are like kind of just winging it and doing their best, and there's these like highly competent trained dudes with like billions of dollars in funding with this gear that they can basically read the newspaper over the dude's shoulder from Guatemala if they wanted to, and they're like, yep, nope, we're not using any of this for your drug case anymore, we're going to terrorism. Bye. Good luck.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean,
no. I mean, like the less federal surveillance you have on like the American people is probably better. But
yeah. And the other thing, actually, I forgot to mention too, is like with Daniels and Burrell, but is that's where another thing we start seeing through this that I think that The Wire does a good job of is pointing out how political considerations come into, whether a case gets taken on or not.
Yeah. What I love about this show with the political stuff is that we wind up seeing the mayor in the series, but we never see like the state governor, or we never see like we see like the state senators and stuff. But like the state level government and above is this like mythical creature that exists to like kind of screw with our main characters from afar, you know, because Baltimore is not the capital, and it's certainly not the capital of the country, so it's kind of ruled over from afar, and we see like kind of the caprice of government acting without local knowledge on the people of Baltimore. Both from like the political perspective of people that we don't like, and down to like the street level. Even the criminals kind of feel it occasionally in the series. I think that's a really cool choice that the writers made with this.
Yeah, and the way that they get into the actual detail for the first time is it's fascinating watching McNulty and Daniels immediately butt up against each other. Like, this is how McNulty's like, this is what we need to do this, and Daniels immediately echoing what his superiors have said.
No.
Yeah. He's like, I've got a pension, man. You're crazy. It's kind of the look he's giving him. Or he's kind of realizing who he's actually drawn for this detail, because he thinks he's just he knows Kima, Herc, and Carver. He knows he's got oh boy, I'm Herc. He's got the very excited one. He's got Kima, and he's probably like, okay, I can rely on Kima, and Carver's decently solid. I wonder who this McNulty guy is. I hope he's like a solid worker or whatever. And he's like, so what should we do? And he hears McNulty's like whole long spiel, and he's like, this motherfucker. He doesn't sigh, but he kind of gives him a look like, oh fuck. Like he's looking at him like he's angry about all the late nights he's going to have to work because of this guy for the next 6 months. And he knows it already.
But, you know, McNulty rubs off on Daniels in a different way than Kima.
Yeah.
But like, you know, like I think McNulty rubs off on a few people actually. And Daniels is slow to go. You know, he's, you know, Daniels, Herc, and Carve are like the holdouts, apart from, you know, the literal just humps who are there to milk a clock that get stuck on the detail literally to hold them back, you know. But yeah, no, like I said, it starts, I believe, with D and McNulty. Like, we've already got changes going on in their lives in episode 1. And they're going to be catalysts for those around them, you know, Stringer and Avon on the one hand, and, you know, the rest of the cops on the other hand. Like, all these people's lives are going to change because of some things that, you know, because of some bees in the bonnets of McNulty and D, basically.
Yeah, and then we with McNulty and that scene with Daniels, it seems to trigger. That's when we get our first scene of McNulty and Bunk getting drunk. Is you know, after that day, then it's basically like there's a we keep coming back to Bunk and McNulty at the bar, and then Bunk and McNulty drunk on the tracks. And the arc that McNulty goes through in this drinking journey is just like, I'm gonna fucking do this case. Fuck it.
You know what?
Oh, by the way, the cop shooting, taking his frustrations out on mice with his service pistol. Yep, true story. True story from Homicide.
God.
Yeah.
I hate that story because I just picture the explosion of a mouse.
Jay Lance, literally the character. Yeah.
Because
hold on, actually, I've got. Generations from now, this is from Homicide. Generations from now, homicide detectives in Baltimore will still be telling T.P. McLarney stories.
Oh, no.
McLarney, who is a sergeant, spent a single day sharing an office with Landsman before deadpanning a confidential memo to Diodario. Sergeant Landsman stares at me strangely. I am convinced that he views me as a sex object. McLarney, who after 4 beers spoke in football metaphors and would always offer his detectives the same shred of advice. My men should go into the game with a plan. The game, once again. I don't want to know what it is, but they should have one. McLarney, who once drove home on a busy shift to rescue his wife and son by using his .38 to shoot a rampaging mouse in the bedroom closet. I cleaned it up, he explained on his return to the office, but I thought about leaving it there as a warning to others. So this is a real fucking guy, man. You know?
Well, at least it's like a 38, not like a 9 hollow point, but that's still going to explode the poor mouse all over the place.
Oh yeah. Oh my god.
I just get an
imagine.
immediate recall. Like one time I was I was having a hell of a time catching a mouse in my house. Like I kept putting a trap down and get around it, and then one point it just was running past me boldly, and I was like, "Fuck you!" and I just stomped.
Oh no.
Oh,
I still remember the smell that exploded out of that thing. Oh God, yeah. So you all can have that memory vicariously.
I won't even step on a palmetto bug myself. No, thank you.
No, I use a flamethrower on those.
Like I'm just gonna have to get rid of the shoe if I step on a palmetto. Like squash a mouse or a rat. No, I'm just gonna have to move now. I'm not even cleaning that up.
Yeah, I live in Florida, man. I use a flamethrower on the palmetto bugs down here.
Oh man, first time in a subtropical zone. I remember I was in like a Walgreens or Rite Aid, and I'm like, dude, there's a giant cockroach in here. And this guy's like, oh, you just got here, huh? You know, like,
first time.
The guy that works there, exactly. The guy that works there, he's like, yeah, it's a No, it's not a giant cockroach. It's a palmetto bug. No, it's a freaking giant cockroach that flies.
I hate those things so much.
Yeah, this is all steering me towards needing a drink. So I guess it's on theme with we're talking about.
I really like how unsexy they make their drinking in this show, especially in this first scene, because we had just seen a scene of Bubbles and his buddies shooting up before this, and that was like very stark and unsexy. It wasn't like, like a 90s movie where it's always funny, like, oh, we're on drugs, oh boy, keep using that voice.
But it's not glamorized or whatever.
Like, I'm so high, oh my God. But no, it's like two dudes getting strung out on heroin. And then McNulty and Bunk are sitting in this like dive bar, just hammering shots, not in like a fun way, but just to numb the pain of the day that they have just gone through. I'm like, wow,
like when there's the begrudging, like, you're gonna make me drink another one, aren't you?
God, you make me do another one.
So that's exactly how I used to drink in the military. I'm dead serious with you. We had to do.
I'm not there yet.
We had to do these field exercises. One year we went to Fort Polk for like 60 days, like 3 times in a year, with like 2-week breaks. And Fort Polk is 100 miles from God in Louisiana. It's a hellhole. If you get Fort Polk, like, do anything you can to get out of that if you're going to enlist kids. But when we got back the third time, me and my best friend went to the liquor store on post, which is called Class 6. And we walk into the Class 6 and we're the first ones to get there. And literally by the time I got my like fancy Blantons to go home and get hammered, my entire 120-man company had gone through that liquor store because they had all gone straight there from formation. And I'm like, this is exactly how we used to drink, and to that exact level. And to the point of this is a really messed up Bob story, but when you said the part about you're going to make me drink another one, me and my best friend got hammered one time, and we had our friend driving us home, and I found a cranberry Red Bull in my pocket. I'm like, we got to drink it. He's like, what? I'm like, it's going to go bad. We got to drink it. He's like, oh yeah, we do got to drink it. I'm like, we got to drink it with vodka. He's like, of course. So I'm like, yeah, this is like so familiar to me. And I'm like, oh my God, is that how I looked when I was in the military, just slamming them back? So this was a really cool scene for me.
And then they're at the bar, and then when they're at the train tracks, it's a crazy scene, just from like, oh, it's just two guys drinking on the tracks, but then like McNulty's pissing as the train's coming at him, and just like there's so much metaphor landing on you when like he's deciding I'm gonna do the case and walks off the track just before the train hits them.
Right. Yeah.
Which is like just totally his life. And we do find out that McNulty has a terrible home life in contrast to Kima's home life, because we see Kima come home and she's got like a beautiful partner.
Very supportive, loving. Yeah.
And the fact that she's queer isn't made like a big, huge point. It's just starkly done like the rest of the series, which I'm really proud of them for doing in 2002. And she's trying to better herself in college.
One of the first like leading ladies who's a lesbian.
Yeah.
Definitely the first leading role as a lesbian cop that I know of.
Color.
So kind of historic.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're bonus points. Yeah, exactly.
And then we
Yeah.
flashed to McNulty in a dive bar with his buddies saying like, my wife won't let me see my kids. Like, just
Right,
hammering
yeah.
shots. I wonder why, but like, could it be because you're getting hammered like every day? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know why she won't let me see my kids. Give me another bottle. Shoot the rat.
Yeah, and he's McNulty's that archetype where he's just kind of only what he's going after.
Yeah.
And just defining himself by the job and being that cliche of someone. It's like, well, you're really good at your job, but you're bad at life.
Very Ahab.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
Ironically, he's not going to go after any white whales, but just
Not
you might want to edit that
wants
one
to
out.
start taking down some of the other cops.
Yeah.
Now that would be a white whale right there. Yeah.
So yeah, and then we're pretty much closing in on the end of the episode, which is where one of the witnesses from the trial at the beginning, which is just beautiful bookending of this whole episode. The fact that we think we're done with that case, D beat it, and then we come back like, no, we're not, and shows the full viciousness of Avon and the streets and this is the thing that carries forward, the detail more than anything, I think, to some degree, once there's a state witness dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. There you fucked up, and especially, even trying to cover it up. It's like, no, dude, it's already on the streets, doesn't matter what your chief or whoever says. Everybody knows that if you snitch on Avon, you will die. And
it also shows you how little the people of that neighborhood trust the system, because there's a body sitting out probably all night and no one called the police. And it was like two patrol guys who just found this body, who I wonder if they got shit on by their superiors. What do you mean you found a body? Just you keep driving.
Yeah, really.
Kick it over into the other district, man.
Right.
But it's really sad too, because you're conditioned from a lot of police procedurals to think that this state witness is going to be like a brave exemplar main character, maybe even, we might see him a couple more times. But this isn't a standard police procedural. This is The Wire, and that dude just dies because he tried to do the right thing,
right?
Or what he thought was the right thing. I'd argue what would be the right thing, because he was turning in a murderer, but and he gets killed for it.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the only times in the show where there's ever a flashback. I think that's because of the fact that you only saw this guy at the beginning of the episode for just
for a second,
barely a minute or two, and he's pointing at the camera,
points him out, and that's the scene.
They had to do that, or I think anyone was never going to pick up on wait, why does anyone care that there's a guy dead? Just he's face down too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they have to turn him over,
right?
And that poor actor moves his face a little when they turn him over.
I didn't notice that.
I did. I only noticed that because I was in a stage play in high school where I was Caesar. And they screwed up after I got stabbed, and the curtain was supposed to drop, and I was supposed to be replaced. But the curtain didn't drop, so I had to sit there during the soliloquies, kind of not trying to breathe. And I finally start noticeably breathing, and I think Brutus goes Caesar lives, and I'm like, fuck you, man. Come on.
Oh my gosh.
You already stabbed me 6 times, bro, and that prop knife wasn't soft.
Et tu, Brute, again?
Come on, bro. The heart's right here. Come on. Yeah.
So yeah, gents, I think we walked the wire. We did the first one. Going into this, I've been it's really I'm excited to go through and celebrate all the things I've always loved about the show, but I am really excited about the things that I see in it that are either lacking or not even oh, it's not as good as I thought. It's just I think about it differently now. And certainly things with like trying to think about how much this show, you know, like when we're talking about the whole arc of it, I'm going to be looking for it more. But like to my mind, there's hardly any racism in this police department that's exhibited.
I mean, there is, but it's a casual,
it's casual and systemic, but you never
you
see
know, this guy, whether you're Irish or black or whatever, you know, everybody, like, it reminds me of the way my granddad claims it was like in the 40s or whatever. And he's like, oh, well, you know, the Hungarians, we called them hunkies and they called us mix and we called them, you know, like, but it wasn't like, there wasn't malice behind it. It was just, that was the word you used, you know? But yeah, so there is what you would call, like, you know, I guess casual racism and sexism and homophobia, which is kind of ironic when we find out that Rawls is gay later. Yeah. Like, because he gets in on it too, you know? He uses the, you know, I'll fuck you in the ass, you little, you know, like there's like homophobic language that comes from one of the only, you know, gay cops that's a dude, you know, or that we know of. But yeah.
Yeah, and see, it'll come up when you guys do season 2, but one of my favorites is when Herc is doing The Wire in season 2 about racism. And he actually is making fun of the white guys. He's like, these white guys are really bad at this. You know, I've got to do the Herc voice.
They just hand you the money with the drugs, and it's just one guy. Yeah, he's like, and they use their real names.
It's like, what do I have to call him up and go like, hi, I'd like some illegal drugs, please?
Exactly.
You got the drugs? I brought the drugs.
Yeah, do you have illegal drugs? I'd like some cocaine. Oh wow.
I've got much respect for black people now, Kima.
Yeah. Oh boy. The white liberal is the enemy of progress, Kima. Oh.
Has Herc been reading Malcolm X?
Apparently, in this timeline, yes. he got
all right. He
got castrated and turned radical.
He found learning to read, and he thought it was about learning to read, so he read it. Oh boy, I'm going to learn how to read so well. Kiva's going to be so proud. I'm going straight to hell. Oh man, yeah, this is a great show though.
Yeah, no, this is going to be fun. I can already tell. I already knew this was going to be fun, but no, this is going to be really fun.
Yeah, the only trick is just going to be like sticking to one episode, because it's like you'll go talking about one thing and it's like, oh, no, I can't wait for this thing to happen.
Yeah.
But you know, there's, like I said, there's so many themes I'm interested in bringing up that, you know, haven't come up in the first episode, but are going to keep coming up again and again. Like, I think every episode we're going to be talking about the numbers game. And how the political considerations are affecting policing. And one thing that hasn't come up yet, but it's definitely going to, that I think is a fucked up subject when you know, The Wire brings up, is nepotism.
Oh, yeah, Presbo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, you see it on both sides too. You see, you know, D'Angelo, that's where you actually first see it. It's like, well, there's the nepotistic nature of the crime family. And then we're going to see the nepotistic nature of like, who gets to rise up and be in the police and move along in the police force. Well, your uncle's a captain. You're going to make rank.
Yeah.
Yeah, Presbo just reminds me specifically the way he handles firearms of so many people I've met handling firearms. Like, I've met so many people who are unsafe like that. It just makes me cringe now.
Oh, by the way, one of the writers, the homicide cop, went on to become a school teacher.
Oh, so Presbo's a real guy too.
That one of the writers of The Wire, exactly. You know, like that too. The cop to. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Hopefully he did not have the exact same arc as Presbo that took him to that.
Yeah, I don't want to that.
But he's definitely like that's
Walt Disney.
That's a character that's going to be fun to get into as far as having a really unexpected arc where you think you feel about a guy, and then where they take you by even just the end of the first season, but then definitely by the time you're in the fourth season, he's like one of the most unambiguously decent characters. But he's one
as
of the
long as he doesn't have a
most.
Glock.
He's the first cop you see in this that's just like, well, there's a complete piece of shit.
Yeah. I always thought he was Michael Rappaport, that actor, and now I feel really bad because that actor is actually like a really good guy in real life, and Michael Rappaport's a total piece of shit. So I'm like, sorry, Mr. Guy who played Presbo.
I'm not Rappaport.
Did you see him get a snowball thrown at him in like New York or Boston or whatever it was? He was trying to do some MAGA chud like phone video, like selfie video. And he's like, I'll tell you about the illegal immigrant. And then like the snowball just comes out of nowhere and splats him. And he posted it. I'm like, okay, fair on you for posting it. Oh my God.
So I think we're gonna walk this one back. We're gonna back up slowly into the bushes or something here, or does anyone have any closing thoughts on the first episode before we wrap things up?
What I love about this series is that it's actually I don't like to use the term high art, but it is actually art that uplifts the viewer, kind of like almost in like a Brechtian way, where you view this art, you consume it, and then like you kind of change the way you think about the world, or your perspective about the way you view the world is kind of more informed after you view it than before, instead of just industrially turned out dreck that we get so often. It's not a mess, like I was saying earlier. It's a very tight, very well done drama, and I think that's something that we don't get a lot these days. And I'm really glad that there's prestige TV like this out there. Even now, in the age of like everything has to be a superhero show, there's stuff like this that's still out there. So seek this out definitely if you haven't seen it already. We've already spoiled episode 1 for you, but definitely seek art like this out in the future as well. So that would be my thing. And thanks guys for having me on.
Well, thanks for joining us. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have to concur with that. This show elevated the bar for me. I think the Sopranos created the door for prestige TV, and Sopranos or The Wire really kicked it wide open. And I had no idea that how much I wanted a thing like this. Like what drew me in was the fact that it wasn't episodic. They weren't buttoning things up in these standalone little stories. When I realized what it was doing,
which is why it was so ahead of its time too.
Taking its time.
Like I think it would have been even bigger if like it would have had to have taken place in the same time though. So I don't know. But yeah, like it like Arrested Development, I've heard the same things about it, that like if it had, been developed in the era of binge watching, everybody would have seen it, But since it had that like, that kind of, novel as series, because it really is. It's more like a novel than a TV show. Law and Order, you watch any episode, even though there's some character development or whatever, it's just every episode is the same. It's formulaic. You know what to expect. Oh, now we've got a 2-parter every 2 seasons. But, so yeah, I think that and the fact that it just doesn't spoon feed you really makes it like definitely above, head and shoulders above the rest of TV, not just cop shows, which it's not. Rafael Alvarez has argued this was not a cop show. It's not a crime show. It's not about criminals. It's not about police. It's about the city, and, but yeah.
Every murder is the tale of a city, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would attribute that quote, but I totally forgot who said it. So just edit the part out where I'm stupid.
No, we'll just fade out slowly right after that and into some music and let the Oh, if someone writes in like, "Oh, you didn't know who that was? Oh, I didn't know you were stupid." I totally know.
That was the very famous.
It is actually like a fairly famous poem, and I just don't know who wrote it off the top of my head anymore.
Like I know I've heard it. Yeah, I've heard the line, but yeah, no, I can't attribute it myself at the moment.
All right, guys. Well, I think a 2-hour podcast about a 1-hour episode is a pretty respectable ratio. So, or
That
maybe
works,
it's not,
yeah.
but you got a lot of time to take it in, and I hope anyone listening to this is going to be back here for episode 2, and looking forward to figuring out who we're going to have on for that. But Bob, I think we'll keep you in reserve.
Oh yeah, I'll happily come
yeah.
back and do any
Yeah.
episode you want. Definitely
This has
bring me
been
back for the
fun,
ones with
for sure.
Cuddy. I freaking love Cuddy, and I used to box. So
Oh, absolutely.
I love that guy too.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I'm excited to get through all the seasons because just having this opportunity to just kind of spew my affection for this show. I'm down for it. I don't care if anyone listens. I'm getting a lot out of it.
it's a lot better than Euphoria,
Exactly.
which like,
I'm not a middle schooler or high schooler, so I don't know what that show
it's just
is.
definitely not for me. Like I watched the first episode of it, and I'm like, this is not made for me. Like this is definitely not.
Yeah,
made.
yeah.
And I think I'm on a list now that's on my Amazon history. Like
all I know exactly what I know from Twitter is apparently there's simulated sex with high schoolers, and I'm too old. I've got silver in my beard, so I'm going to pass on the simulated sex with high schoolers. Even if they're 19 or 20, I don't care. I'm going to be 40 this year. I don't want to see 20-year-olds pretending to be 16-year-olds pretending to have sex.
Yeah, that's like
no
that's like when I started ducking out was when Zdenya was like offering to like blow a dude for coke, and I'm like, okay,
yeah.
This is not for Bob.
I'm uncomfortable now. Yeah, exactly.
Chris Hansen, y'all seeing this? Like,
sex.
I think I'll just stick with Running with Wolves, where I don't have any chances of seeing any teen sex, but occasionally you might see a woman nurse a snake.
Yeah, it gets really weird, doesn't it? Have you finished the first season? like I was telling you, man. Like you think it's like a aliens type thing at first, and then it gets like super weird.
Well, I became really fascinated with the writer and the showrunner when
it's good. I like it a lot.
And yeah, and like the macro stuff. I'm really worried though. Like I hope Ridley they're keeping him the hell away from writing, because that guy has all sorts of the like, hey, it's deep because it's ambiguous.
Have you finished season 1?
Yes.
Okay, so like, did you hear the screenwriter going, "Ask me what it means" at the very end?
Well, the whole show's doing that throughout the whole thing.
It is, but he's like shouting it at the very end. Ask me what it means. Yeah,
it's been a fun ride so far, and I don't mind. But
I like it because it's in the vein of like 2001: A Space Odyssey, and that's kind of like my shtick. Or like Solaris, but they've never adapted Solaris very well. Like I don't know if you guys have read that book.
I've seen the movie, the Soderbergh one.
Oh God, that's awful. You got to if you're gonna watch the movie, you have to watch the 5-hour Soviet version, and that's not actually a joke.
Right? That was it, Andrei Tarkovsky.
Yeah, Tarkovsky, because he saw.
I haven't seen that though. No.
Yeah, well, he saw 2001: A Space Odyssey, and he's like, they make their spaceship look clean and nice. We make our spaceship look like a bus. So like he purposely built this like shitty spaceship for this movie. But
oh nice.
Yeah, but the concept's really cool because it's a planet that's alive, right? And the way it communicates with people is that it copies people from their memory and creates doppelgangers of them on this space station, which is like horrifying for the people. And the planet's just trying to like make friends, but it's just on such a different level of existence from humans that like its attempts to like reach out and be like, oh, I made a friend is like you like picking up an ant. Did
Carl Sagan steal that for Contact?
What's that? Yeah,
because I mean, like
totally.
That's like the whole bit. Well, I'm going to come to you in the form of someone you know, so that I won't like blow your tiny little human mind. Like a dumbed down version of that, basically.
It is because in Solaris, the planet can't really communicate that precisely, so it just like creates a copy of this guy's dead wife, and she's like, "Hey, honey, how you doing?" And he's like, "Holy shit!" Like, he puts her on like an escape rocket and launches her out, and there's another one. He's like, "Oh God." It's a great book. So is Roadside Picnic, which got adapted into the video game Stalker, which is just me going down the list of Soviet science fiction. But Yeah. Oh, it was good to meet you. By the way, I'm trying to start like a book
Oh,
club
definitely.
on my channel. So if either of you guys read an interesting book and you want to talk about it, like hit me up and I'll definitely do that.
Oh wow, yeah. Hey, check out smaller and smaller circles. FH Batukan. Uh, it is the Filipino Silence of the Lambs. That sounds derivative and derogatory, honestly. But like, as far as a recommended, if you like,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, Filipino Silence of the Lambs, originally published in 1996, except it goes into Catholic, a Catholic Church abuse and cover up 6 years before the Boston Globe, right?
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. Also, the idea that, like, there's never been a Filipino serial killer. I mean, unless there have, and it's just the way things are policed here that nobody would ever put two and two together.
Yeah.
So there could have been some operating for decades, and especially if you were in a poorer area, you could totally get away with it. Like it's fucking scary, but like it's got the psychological depth of Silence of the Lambs and the same kind of writing, but it's also like adds a sociological depth
That's interesting.
that is kind of lacking in Thomas Harris's Lambs books. Yeah.
Because they get kind of bad after Lambs, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah. I mean, they're fun and they're good, but like he realized, oh, I'm going to do the Stephen King thing, and everything I write will be a bestseller, and it doesn't really matter what I write anymore. Yeah.
That kind of reminds me of Citizen X. Are you familiar with that one?
Oh yeah,
I've been that's on my list to see soon. I've actually
HBO
because I got Hulu
original?
with the HBO.
HBO did an
and
original.
it was recommended to me. Yeah.
The book is really good too because the Soviets denied that they had serial killers in the USSR because they called it a phenomena of capitalist decadence.
Right.
So like Chilyenko killed like 100 people or something like that. It was a large number of people that this guy killed. And like the people investigating it were like, yeah, this is a serial thing. And they're like, no, that can't happen in Soviet Union.
Right.
And then he was a party member
no
too.
MK Ultra to make serial killers.
Dude, you know what I just found out is that MK Ultra was partially responsible for Kaczynski.
Oh, yeah. Henry Murray, who was friends with Timothy Leary, who admitted being a witting agent of the CIA or asset rather of the CIA for some time. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's all tied together.
They never tested anything fun on me, man. That's what I'm disappointed about. That's all I'm saying.
Well, you don't know that.
Well, okay, fair point. I don't know that.
If it was that good,
it was that good of a trip. I don't remember anything from 3 to 5 p.m. on that one day or whatever.
Hey, Bob,
what they say
how
about
about a nice
Woodstock
game of
and MK
cards?
Ultra? If you remember it, you weren't there.
Have a nice game of cards. It's a good one. Oh man, yeah.
Bob, I will take 2 creams and no sugar.
I see how it is. They did show me a test thing of this thing called BZ, which I think I was talking to you about the other day.
Oh god,
because it's weaponized and aerosolized LSD mixed with weaponized and aerosolized THC. And the idea was that they would shoot an artillery shell of this stuff over the enemy's front lines and airburst it. And then everyone would just be tripping and you could just like walk over them.
If I were a chemical weapon, that is what I would be.
And the funniest thing is the test footage was an Army Ranger, so it's like Billy Badass. And they have him run an obstacle course. And then they like dose him with the BZ gas. And then he's just trying to chase a butterfly. He's like, hey man.
Right. Yeah. I remember hearing stories about like guys spending like 3 days in a shower, with their uniform on. And also like there were group hallucinations, which is really cool because like you don't get that as often with just LSD or mushrooms. But like you would have 2 guys playing tennis against each other, except there's no court, there's no ball, there's no rackets. It's just 2 crazy army guys. Like they see the ball, that's what's important.
We had a kid in my training who wanted to get out on a mental health beef. And to this day, I'm 50-50 on whether he was serious or not. But he pretended he was carrying around a basketball, right? Like he would be dribbling it as he would be walking. If he passed it to you and you didn't catch it, he would go and get it. when we'd have formation, he would run behind the formation and put his basketball down and then come back into the formation. And like on the last day, he's walking out of our company area, and he walks by the captain's office, walks into the captain's office, puts the basketball down on the guy's desk and goes, "Thank you, sir," and then leaves. And that sounds like he was faking the whole time, but the sincerity and the deadpan sincerity that this dude had the entire time.
I don't need this anymore. I can leave it with you.
Yeah, like, thank you, sir.
Like maybe it was his security basketball, his invisible security basketball, not a blanket and not real, but like it was in his head or or a long con. I don't know.
He's insane or insanely committed to the bit.
He was 50-50, man. Because the captain got a little stand on his desk after that for the basketball, the fake basketball. She had a good sense of humor, I guess. Those are great. All taxpayer funded. That kid gets like 80% disability now from that.
Jeez.
He didn't even have to go to Afghanistan. Good for him.
Yeah, it gets you some, man.
Yeah. I have actually been to Baltimore, by the way, and both times I've been there, it's like overcast and shitty like it is in The Wire all the time. But if you do go get
so at least the UK folks felt at home.
Yeah.
This is one more thing that makes it feel like, Cleveland is the sister city of Baltimore.
Are you guys? I'm so sorry.
I always feels like it, or I feel a lot of camaraderie with this city. It's especially like reading, like the story of
deindustrialization.
No, little Melvin. And how he was this gambler that figured out how to do game, like came back, and then there's the theory that he was too flashy and that's why the cops went after him. And that was what was really fascinating in the article. We should talk about this on an episode. I forgot to bring this up, was that there's and I found a documentary, it's on Prime, called the King of Heroin or something. It's just Lil Melvin. It's a very badly made documentary. The filmmaker just has these terrible recreations sputtered in throughout, and there's awful music playing through everything, and it's lit badly.
I thought that was a dramatic movie.
It's a documentary with the really bad recreation stuff in it. No, it's Little Melvin mostly and David Simon. But the fascinating thing about the story was that to hear Melvin tell it in the documentary, they put a charge on him trying to bust him for something before he was really in drugs, and then that's when he was in jail. He was like, well, fuck it, y'all are gonna bust me for selling drugs, I'm gonna sell drugs like no one's ever fucking seen.
You're gonna accuse me of cheating, I'm gonna cheat, right? Yeah.
What's funny is I live in Daytona in Florida, and I don't encourage you guys to come here as tourists because it's not that fun. Just stay in Orlando or go to Jacksonville. But we have this huge Harley complex. If you Google Daytona, Destination Daytona, it's this gigantic Harley complex. And that was all given to this guy because he didn't rat out his friends who had a cocaine smuggling operation. And then the 5 guys who are running the cocaine operation now have a gigantic auto mall off of 95, and they own a quarter of the town. It's just ridiculous.
Well, we had someone here in Cleveland. There was a documentary that got started and stalled about him. But Winston Willis, he won big in gambling in Vegas, I don't know, something like $500,000.
Oh, good for him.
Came back and started buying up property in Cleveland and created a bit of Cleveland's own sort of Black Wall Street area and all this stuff. And then during the Howe riots here, when Cleveland caught a lot of the fire from the MLK shootings in the 60s, they basically went in, busted this guy for writing a bad check, and it turned out he didn't do it. But while he was in jail, they got all his properties, and that's where the main strip of hospitals that makes Cleveland such a big fuck deal around the world is.
Yeah, I thought it was the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Museum.
Yeah, that's why the elites flock to Cleveland. It's for the.
That's the only reason I've ever gone to
not
Cleveland. I'll be honest.
Transplants.
That's the one time I ever went to Cleveland, was the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Museum, to see Jerry Lee Lewis, who was possibly still alive at the time.
Ew. I can't imagine what he'd look like by now.
Well, now I think he's quite dead, but in like 2010, they had to like wheel him out on his piano.
Yeah.
He sounded like the pedophile from Family Guy. Goodness gracious, great balls of fur.
It was his 13-year-old cousin or what was his cousin, niece anyways, well, whatever, but I mean, come on, man.
but he could play the piano.
Right. It was a different world for sure. I mean, Elvis was a star when he went to Priscilla's junior prom. Yeah. Junior prom, not the prom. She wasn't old enough to go to the prom yet. She was 14. It was her junior prom.
To be fair, he was probably
and Elvis shows up.
To be fair, he was probably packing a 45 at the time. He famously loved to pack heat. Like he packed heat when he went to visit Nixon in the White House in the 60s. Like the Secret Service had to take like 3 guns off of him.
Did you see that movie with Michael Shannon playing Elvis?
I did actually see that movie.
Oh yeah.
The better version is the Drunk History where Jack Black plays him.
Oh, I just saw there's a new Elvis movie coming out, and I have a weird connection to Elvis that like my parents have always told me. It's like the day my mom, like the seconds after she realized she was pregnant, like whatever, like the test turned blue, that came right over the radio, like Elvis died.
No shit. Can you shake your leg?
I guess so. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what I got out of it, but and I just saw there's a new biopic coming out about him, and it plays a little bit of it on the trailer, and then it goes to the logos, and the first logo that comes up, BZ.
Oh, see, they know. They're copying you, man. You got to sue for gimmick infringement,
right? I'll make chemical weapons and movies and podcasts. You do it all, baby.
Yeah,
and little journalism.
Regular Zaibatsu.
All right, man. I gotta go take a leak and have a smoke and get to bed.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably smoke a cigar. Myself. You guys have a great night because I am a good guy and I do enjoy these Nicaraguan sticks.
Gotta watch your back. Well, I beg your pardon. Walk the straight and narrow track. If you walk with Jesus, He's gonna save your soul. You gotta keep the devil way down in the hole. Well, you don't have to worry if you hold on to Jesus' hand. We'll all be safe from Satan when the thunder rolls. We just gotta keep the devil way down in the hole. Just gotta help me keep the devil
wanted to do an outro. I don't know if we'll do these for every episode, but I wanted to take the time to specifically thank anybody who has come this far and listened to the whole episode. I really appreciate, all the long haulers when it comes to content, because I know I am. I think when I first encountered Phil, it was listening to Program to Chill's Patreon, and that's what, like a 4-hour, 3.5-hour episode.
It was 4 hours, but only 3.5 hours you guys got to listen to. I'm not going to tell you about the rest.
Yeah, and I am interviewing him later this evening, so I'm excited for that. We got a whole crossover verse happening, but man, I can't stop all the notifications from going off on my phone. But that just shows how, this is supposed to be low stakes chill recording. And like I said, I just wanted to come in here and thank anyone who's listened and make that one last pitch for supporting the Patreon, because Phil and I are both struggling on, working really important stories. He's got a huge bank of them that are worth looking into, and I have a queue of tragedies I would love to get to, but I have to pay my bills doing websites for fairly, I wouldn't say shady stuff, but I don't believe in it. And I think if I were to sit you down and be like, okay, I can build this website for this corporate bullshit today, or I could make a whole lot of content and work on stories about wrongful prosecution, and I ask you that, which would you rather me do? And if it's the latter, then I hope you'd contribute to the Patreon.
Exactly.
And likes and shares are fucking free, and we need them.
Amen. Thank you. Yes, please.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, come in here at the end and make that thank you, that earnest thank you for any of my Patreon supporters on my individual Patreon. I want to thank them for listening to the show, so I'm going to simulcast this. Phil, is there anything you wanted to say to, whoever it is right now that's listening?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I said, thanks so much, because I mean, we're past the 2.5 hour mark. You're a legend. I'm glad that you were able to sit through this with us. We had fun. We're hoping everybody else does. But yeah, like BZ was saying, this right now is a labor of love. Before we recorded this, we were just talking about how are we going to come up with the money to blah 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 and X, Y, and Z, because everything costs money, and we're doing this with our free time because we enjoy it and we love it. But at the same time, with stuff where we are wanting to commission covers of a song for the intro, that's great for exposure, maybe, but the last time I went to the grocery store and I was like, I've got 5 exposure and 7 esteem of my peers. How much bread does that buy? And you know what? They gave me a funny look and told me to come back with money. So unfortunately, that's just the way the world works still. But yeah, no, like I said, we've got this is a long road ahead of us. I'm really excited about it. And it is, like I said, a labor of love. It's kind of even like a nice, it's a nice way to get away without getting too far away, because for me, I gotta admit, all of my hobbies are related to the things that I do for work. So it's nice to okay, wait a minute, we're doing corruption, but David Simon's version of corruption. We're gonna watch The Wire. I'm gonna watch Homicide. I'm gonna read The Corner and listen to the audiobook of and that's great. It's really great, because on the one hand, I'm enjoying it, and at the same time, I feel like I'm being productive in some ways, and at the same time, I hope, creating something enjoyable that people will get something out of. So yeah, if you do, heck, you don't have to sign up at the Patreon, but we've got a $1 tier where you still get into the Discord, join the community, $12 a year. That's 3 cups of Starbucks, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
But
and I would say too, if you're already a Patreon supporter of a big podcast that is pulling in tens of thousands of dollars a month, and you maybe shift that over to us for a little bit, and you can always go back and unlock episodes. And I'll tell you a dirty little secret. I will tell you, if you stuck around this long, you've earned to know a little hidden knowledge about Discords and Patreon access. Once you get that Discord access, baby, unless the mods are real vigilant, you don't get kicked out. I'm in all kinds of Discords for podcasts I no longer support. So yeah, I can promise you, we will not kick you out unless you are an asshole.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I definitely, I do want to, say that like this show has really been a nice escape for me, and it's been nice to do something that feels like it's aligned, parallel with the work I've been doing with journalism, which that is, I love doing that, but it's like very like, what do I do next? There is so many things I could do, and it's hard for me to nail it down. This has been nice to like, okay, there's going to be a discipline to this. Like we schedule an interview, and I got to say that is my fucking favorite part of this whole thing has been thinking of people to talk to and finding people who like, wait till you see who we've got lined up for episodes, I think 5 and 6 and going forward. We got a lot of really awesome guests coming in, just what we have right now. And that is fun. And I am excited to be like learning the craft of like formally producing a show that has this discipline.
I'm glad you can do that, by the way, because we've talked about that. Like I've tried.
I'm taking
to edit
all
before.
the skills that I've acquired,
the graphic design and the editing, and it's like I could do that as long as you don't need it to not be shitty. Like
for me, this is, I'm not getting paid. I am not getting paid, but like I make on my personal Patreon like $100-ish a month from 30 so Patreons, and I still love, though, that I have found a way to take 20 years of working in like the corporate cubicle salt mines of digital marketing, making banner ads for everything from Pfizer and P&G and Wells Fargo and Citibank and all the goddamn banks and every awful thing, and making motion graphics and programming bullshit, like, things for, promotional contests or whatever, just so much nonsense. And to be able to take those skills now and take them and apply them to something I believe in and I love, that is mine to craft and produce, that's been so rewarding already. But my wife is going to lose her goddamn mind if I take on any more passion projects that pay nothing. And I like my marriage and I don't want to break it, but I am dangerously close to doing that if I don't start getting some like actual Patreon support in some ways. So I've just been like, this show, Phil and I both talk about how hard it is to like self-promote or ask for like things for yourself with the work you do, but this has become a like, more of like a brand and building it and producing, and I can believe in it.
It's not just about you and me. We're platforming people who are really interesting and cool and have things to say, and it's not just you and me as talking heads. We're just facilitating like these voices coming to the people, and I love that. So that's, or at least that's how I have to sell it to my brain in order to say, no, seriously, come on, man, like at least like and share.
Exactly. That means so much. And it was hard for my marketing brain not to kick it and be like, State of Phil, like, let's do an outro, let's make a hard ask, because you got to ask. People don't know you need help.
Call to action.
And here we are. That's what is called in corporate world, we are at the bottom of the funnel. And
no, I know what a funnel is. I hate myself.
I know. It's an inverted pyramid. It's a pyramid.
It's not a funnel. It's an inverted pyramid. I'm gonna remember that one. Oh god!
I think that's an Always Sunny in Philadelphia reference. But
oh my gosh! Wait! You know what? You're right, because I remember looking up, because there's a YouTube video where a lady is doing an MLM and calls the funnel an inverted pyramid, and somebody posted that in the comments. Oh my gosh, that is true. Oh my gosh, like the inverted pyramid.
That was the joke.
Like a real thing. Yeah, it's not even just Always Sunny. There was like a real lady with a real YouTube with a real multi-level marketing
Oh
product.
no, yeah. The sales funnel's a real thing. If you're doing MLM shit, you're gonna need
Right,
anyone needs a sale. That and that gets back
I
to
mean,
like
not just MLM,
not only
sales
have
in
I
general.
done
Yeah.
not only have I done the technical shit of like making animations and design and websites and the development stuff, but I've been close with like the head people who do the Mad Men pitches that
Yeah.
and understand branding at that level where they're selling huge clients on like their vision for a thing, and it's not just like
Like they see the
this color
colors and
blue is
everything like the
pretty.
Matrix,
And
Yeah.
this is the thing I like telling people I learned about branding that I think is useful to think about, even if like don't become a brand like the way like
Right.
that
Yeah.
fucking who's that V asshole or like I'm forgetting his
Voldemort.
name.
Sorry, you're not supposed to
Yeah.
mention that name.
No, whatever. One of the like self-helpy guys, or the way people like be like, you need to be a brand, but
Yeah.
understanding at least what branding means on like the corporate level, I thought it was a good like definition of which is that it's not the colors and this and that, it's the emotional connection or just the
Yeah.
relationship a company has with a customer. And I mean, as a vocabulary term, that can work for like, hey, this is your brand as a person is like, when I hang out with you, you interrupt me and you're rude and you don't seem to care about anything you talk about. So your brand is shit in my book. I'm not judging you
Right.
on how you looked or whatever, but I mean, that could come into a part of it. But anyway,
I do hope that one thing that we're able to do here, because this is something I've noticed like just in the past couple of weeks when I started looking into like, where people are posting about The Wire. Do you realize this is a worldwide phenomenon? Like I've seen posts in Arabic like about the new David Simon show where everything's in Arabic except, and then it'll say The Wire in English script and then back to Arabic.
I don't think
that's
the Wire's
pretty cool.
coattails. I don't think the Wire's coattails have ceased moving and dragging along. They just get, as far as their audience, the audience just is a continuous, like there's still people who have, my wife has not seen the Wire and we've been together for like, 11, 12 years now. And she just hasn't gotten around to taking it in, and I understand it's hard, and we have kids and a family, and you only have so much TV time.
Right,
and I watched it when I was single in my 20s and just could spend 3 days watching a whole show and doing nothing else.
One of my best friends, I was talking to her today, and I was like, she's a huge Steve Earle fan, right? And I was like, and like Steve Earle does the cover on one of the seasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, he's actually a character. He's a recurring character in the show too. She's wait, what? I was planning on watching the show because I wanted to listen to the podcast.
Oh my
God! If you told me that Steve Earle was in it, I would have already been through season 1.
Hell yeah. Yeah, so I mean, like there's no, and the fact that when you do find a Wire fan, they're not. I have yet to find one that is ambivalent of like, oh yeah, I remember watching that. That was all right. Like I think I know I've seen it out there, and on a certain level, you encounter it though. People either they really like the show, or they'll be like, you know what? It gets a lot of kudos for this, but it gets this fucking wrong. Like it evokes strong feelings from anyone who's taken it all in.
Which is always a win. You like hate me or love me. Don't be ambivalent to me though. Just don't be ambivalent. Like give me a reaction here. Don't ignore me. Yeah.